Get out of my house! Get out right now! Melissa. Carter's voice shattered the silence of the penthouse. Her hands trembled as she pointed at the woman standing in the nursery doorway. The cleaning lady, the invisible woman who scrubbed their floors twice a week. But she wasn't invisible anymore. She was holding Melissa's son, and the baby the same baby who had bitten 7 nannies, who screamed bloody murder at every touch. Who hadn't smiled in 8 months was sleeping peacefully in her arms, sleeping like he belonged there. Mrs. Carter, please let me explain. There's nothing to explain. Melissa's voice dropped to a whisper that was somehow more terrifying than her screaming. I found the adoption records. I know exactly who you are. The cleaning lady's face crumpled. She looked down at the sleeping child, then back at Melissa, tears streaming down her cheeks. He's my son, she whispered. He was my son first. If you want to know how these two mothers found their way through the impossible, subscribe to our channel and stay until the very end. Drop a comment telling us which city you're watching from. We love seeing how far our stories travel across the world. 2 years and 3 months earlier, Rosa Martinez signed away her son in a hospital room that smelled like antiseptic and despair. Her hands shook so violently she could barely hold the pen. The social worker, a kind woman named Patricia with gray hair and tired eyes, had placed the documents in front of her 1 page at a time, explaining each clause in a gentle voice that made everything worse. This is the relinquishment of parental rights, Patricia said. Once you sign this, you will have no legal claim to the child. Rosa stared at the paper. The words blurred through her tears. In the bassinet beside her bed, her son slept peacefully. She had named him Miguel after her father, who died when she was 12. She had whispered that name to him for 48 hours straight, trying to give him something to remember her by. I know this is difficult, Patricia continued, but you're giving him a chance at a better life. The family we've selected, they're good people. They've been trying to have a child for 5 years. They'll love him. They'll give him everything. Everything I can't give him. Rosa thought, a home, food, safety, a future. She thought about the homeless shelter where she had spent the last 3 months of her pregnancy, the thin mattress, the communal bathroom, the sounds of other women crying in the night. She thought about the $40,000 in medical bills from the delivery, 32 hours of labor and emergency C-section complications that nearly killed her, money she would never be able to pay. She thought about Derek, the man who had promised to love her forever, who had vanished the moment she told him she was pregnant. Last she heard, he was in California with another woman living the life he had promised to build with her. Miss Martinez. Patricia's voice pulled her back. Are you ready? Rosa looked at her son one last time. His tiny fingers, his dark hair, her hair, the birthmark on his left wrist, barely visible, shaped like a crescent moon. Can I hold him? Rosa whispered. One more time. Patricia nodded. Rosa lifted Miguel from the bassinet and cradled him against her chest. He stirred his eyes, opening for just a moment, dark brown like hers, before closing again. I love you, Rosa whispered into his ear. I love you more than anything in this world, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I couldn't be what you needed. She began to hum the lullaby her mother had sung to her when she was small, the same lullaby she had sung to him every night while he grew inside her, her hand pressed against her belly, her voice the only gift she could give. Miguel's breathing slowed. His tiny body relaxed completely. I will find you, Rosa promised. Somehow, someday I will find you again. Then she placed him back in the bassinet, picked up the pen, and signed her name on the line that would separate them forever. Rosa never saw them take him away. Patricia had suggested she close her eyes, and Rosa had obeyed, too broken to do anything else. She heard footsteps, heard the bassinet wheels rolling across the floor, heard a door open and close, and then silence. She stayed in that hospital bed for 3 more hours, staring at the ceiling, feeling like someone had reached into her chest and ripped out everything that mattered. The next 18 months were a blur of survival. Rosa worked 3 jobs, cleaning offices in the morning, washing dishes at a restaurant in the afternoon, organizing storage units in the evening. She slept 4 hours a night, sometimes less. She moved from the shelter to a tiny studio apartment in Queens that cost more than she could afford, but was at least hers. She paid her medical bills slowly, $20 here, $50 there, watching the balance barely move while interest piled on top of interest. And every single night before she fell asleep, she looked at the Polaroid photos she had taken in the hospital. Miguel newborn cradled in her arms, the only proof that he had ever been hers. She told herself it would get easier. It never did. 8 months ago, Rosa's supervisor at Elite Cleaning Services called her into the office. Good news, he said. We're assigning you to a new building. Penthouse apartment on Central Park South. Very wealthy family. They specifically requested someone reliable and discreet. Rosa nodded. Rich people were all the same. They wanted their homes spotless, but their help invisible. She had cleaned for enough of them to know the routine. The family's name is Carter, her supervisor continued. Jonathan and Melissa Carter. They have a young son. You'll need to be quiet when you work. The baby has some sleep issues. Rosa's heart clenched at the word baby, but she pushed the feeling down. She couldn't afford to be emotional about other people's children. I can start tomorrow, she said. The next morning, Rosa arrived at the Carter penthouse at 5:15 a.m. The apartment was everything she expected, 4,000 square feet of gleaming marble and designer furniture, floor-to-ceiling windows with views of Central Park, a kitchen full of appliances that had clearly never been used. She began her routine moving silently through the space, wiping surfaces that were already clean, organizing items that were already perfect. And then she reached the nursery. The door was slightly open. Rosa pushed it wider, expecting to see an empty crib, maybe some toys scattered on the floor. Instead, she saw him. The baby was awake, sitting up in his crib, playing with a stuffed elephant. He had dark hair that stuck up in every direction. He had brown eyes that scanned the room with quiet curiosity. He had a birthmark on his left wrist, shaped like a crescent moon. Rosa's cleaning supplies crashed to the floor. The baby looked up at the sound. His eyes met hers. And Rosa's world collapsed. She knew that face. She had memorized every detail of it during those 48 hours in the hospital. She had dreamed about it every night for 18 months. She had traced its outline in the Polaroid photo 1,000 times. Miguel, her son, her Miguel. The baby tilted his head, studying her. Then slowly his face transformed. He smiled. Rosa didn't remember crossing the room. She didn't remember reaching into the crib. All she knew was that suddenly he was in her arms, his tiny body pressed against her chest, his fingers gripping her uniform shirt like he would never let go. "Miguel," she sobbed. "Oh God, Miguel." She sank to the floor, holding him, rocking him, crying so hard she couldn't breathe. He didn't fuss. He didn't pull away. He just nestled against her, making soft, contented sounds, as if this was exactly where he was supposed to be. Rosa stayed on that floor for almost an hour. She knew she should leave. She knew someone would wake up soon and find her. She knew this was insane, impossible, a coincidence so cruel it had to be some kind of cosmic joke, but she couldn't let go. Finally, when she heard footsteps elsewhere in the apartment, Rosa forced herself to stand. She placed Miguel back in his crib, wiping her face with trembling hands. "I found you," she whispered. "I told you I would find you." Miguel looked up at her with those dark eyes, her eyes, and reached his little arms toward her. Rosa backed away before she could change her mind. She picked up her scattered cleaning supplies, finished her work in a daze, and left through the service entrance. She didn't request a different assignment. She couldn't. For the next 8 months, Rosa lived a double life. Twice a week, every Tuesday and Friday, she arrived at the Carter penthouse before dawn. She cleaned the apartment meticulously, silently, invisibly. And then when she was sure no one was awake, she went to the nursery. 15 minutes. That was all she allowed herself. 15 minutes to hold her son, to sing him the lullaby, to pretend the last 2 years hadn't happened. Miguel Ethan, she had learned his new name was Ethan, always responded the same way. The moment he saw her, his face lit up. He reached for her without hesitation. He calmed in her arms instantly, completely, like she was the only safe place in the world. Rosa knew it was wrong. She knew she was crossing lines that should never be crossed. She knew that if the Carters ever found out, they would fire her, maybe have her arrested, definitely make sure she never saw her son again. But she couldn't stop. Those 15 minutes were the only thing keeping her alive. Meanwhile, in the Carter household, chaos reigned. Ethan had become a legend among New York's elite nanny circles, but not the kind any family wanted. He bit hard. The first nanny, a cheerful woman named Sandra, quit after 3 days with teeth marks on her forearm. He scratched. The second nanny, an experienced grandmother named Dorothy, left with 3 red lines down her cheek that took 2 weeks to heal. He screamed. Not normal baby crying, violent, ear-splitting shrieks that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than his lungs. The third, fourth, and fifth nannies lasted less than a week each. Jonathan Carter tracked everything obsessively. He kept spreadsheets of Ethan's sleep patterns, his crying episodes, his feeding times. He consulted pediatricians, child psychologists, sleep specialists, developmental experts. No one could explain what was wrong. "He's just a difficult baby," one doctor said. "Some children are like this. He'll grow out of it." But Jonathan didn't believe that. There was something in Ethan's eyes, a searching quality, a desperate seeking that suggested he was looking for something. Or someone. Melissa Carter was falling apart. She had waited 5 years for this baby. 5 years of failed fertility treatments, of negative pregnancy tests, of watching her friends have children while her arms remained empty. When the adoption agency finally called with news of a newborn boy, she had cried for 3 hours straight. She had imagined a perfect life. Nursery rhymes and first steps, birthday parties and bedtime stories, a child who would look at her with love and call her mama. Instead, she got a baby who screamed at her touch. "What am I doing wrong?" she sobbed to Jonathan one night after Ethan had rejected her for the 100th time. "Why does he hate me?" "He doesn't hate you," Jonathan said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Then why? Why won't he let me hold him? Why does he look at me like I'm a stranger?" Jonathan had no answer. The 8th nanny lasted exactly 4 hours. Her name was Patricia, a stern woman in her 50s with 20 years of experience and impeccable references. She had worked with difficult children before. She had handled biters, scratchers, screamers. She was confident she could handle Ethan Carter. She was wrong. "He's not just difficult," Patricia told Melissa as she packed her bag, her hand wrapped in gauze where Ethan had bitten her. "He's disturbed. I've never seen anything like it. The way he looks at me like he's waiting for someone else to walk through the door." "What do you mean?" "I mean he's searching for something. Someone. And until he finds it, he's going to keep doing this." Patricia left without collecting her final paycheck. Melissa stood in the nursery after she was gone, staring at her son. Ethan sat in his crib, quiet for once, his dark eyes fixed on the door. Waiting. "Who are you looking for?" Melissa whispered. Ethan didn't answer. Jonathan started noticing the pattern 3 weeks later. He was reviewing his spreadsheets, looking for any correlation that might explain Ethan's behavior when something jumped out at him. Tuesdays and Fridays. On those days, and only those days, Ethan slept well. He cried less. He ate without fussing. He was almost peaceful. "What happens on Tuesdays and Fridays?" Jonathan asked Melissa that evening. She thought for a moment. "The cleaning lady comes." "That's it. That's it." Jonathan pulled up the security camera app on his phone. They had installed cameras throughout the apartment months ago after the second nanny quit hoping to catch any problems on video. He scrolled back through the footage from that morning. Tuesday, cleaning day. At 5:17 a.m., the service door opened. A woman in a gray uniform entered, pushing a cleaning cart. She moved through the apartment efficiently, silently, her face angled away from the cameras. At 6:03 a.m., she approached the nursery door. Jonathan leaned closer to the screen. The woman pushed the door open and stepped inside. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then she walked to the crib. She looked down at Ethan for a long moment, and then she picked him up. Jonathan's breath caught. He watched the cleaning lady hold his son. Watched her rock him gently, her lips moving, singing something maybe. Watched Ethan's body relax completely, his face transform from tension to peace. Watched his son fall asleep in a stranger's arms. The video showed them like that for 15 minutes. 15 minutes of calm. 15 minutes of connection. Then the cleaning lady placed Ethan back in the crib, touched his cheek gently, and backed out of the room. Jonathan sat in his office for a long time after the video ended. His mind raced through possibilities. Maybe she was just good with children. Maybe Ethan responded to her energy, her calmness. Maybe it was completely innocent, but something nagged at him. The way she held Ethan wasn't professional. It was personal, intimate, like she knew him. Jonathan opened his laptop and pulled up Ethan's adoption file. He had read it dozens of times before, but now he looked at it with new eyes. Birth mother's information mostly redacted. Age at time of birth? 30. Location Manhattan. Circumstances. Financial hardship. Single mother. Unable to provide adequate care. And there, at the bottom of the third page, partially visible where the redaction had been imperfect, first name Rosa. Jonathan's hands trembled as he opened another window and searched the cleaning company's employee database. He found the woman assigned to their building easily. Rosa Martinez, age 32, employed by Elite Cleaning Services for 2 years. Background check clear. Criminal record none. Address a studio apartment in Queens. Jonathan stared at the screen. Rosa. The same first name as Ethan's birth mother. The same age. The same location. It could be a coincidence. Rosa was a common name. New York was full of young women who had given up children for adoption. But the way Ethan responded to her. Jonathan closed his laptop. He needed to know the truth. The next Tuesday, Jonathan woke at 4:30 a.m. He didn't tell Melissa. He didn't explain why he was leaving the bedroom before dawn, why he was setting up his laptop in the guest room, with a clear view of the hallway security camera. He just watched. At 5:15 a.m., Rosa Martinez entered through the service door. Jonathan tracked her movements through the apartment, kitchen, living room, bathrooms, until finally at 6:08 a.m. she approached the nursery. This time, Jonathan didn't just watch the video feed. He got up and walked silently down the hallway. The nursery door was slightly open. Through the gap, Jonathan could see Rosa standing beside the crib looking down at Ethan. She was crying. Tears streamed down her face as she watched him sleep. Her hand trembled as she reached down to touch his cheek. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry, baby. I'm sorry I couldn't keep you." Jonathan's heart stopped. "I think about you every second of every day," Rosa continued, her voice breaking. "I see your face when I close my eyes. I hear your crying in my dreams. And I hate myself for what I did. I hate myself for not being stronger, not being better, not finding another way." She leaned down and pressed her lips to Ethan's forehead. "But I found you," she whispered. "I told you I would find you, and I did. And even if I can never hold you again after today, at least I know you're safe. At least I know you're loved." Ethan stirred. His eyes opened, and when he saw Rosa, his face transformed with pure joy. "Ma," he said. Jonathan froze. It was Ethan's first word. They had been waiting for it for months, hoping it would be Mama for Melissa or Dada for him. But it wasn't. It was Ma. And he was looking at Rosa. Rosa sobbed as she lifted him from the crib. Ethan wrapped his arms around her neck and buried his face against her shoulder. "Ma," he said again. "Ma, ma, ma." Jonathan backed away from the door. His hands were shaking. His mind was reeling. Everything he thought he knew about his family, his son, his life, all of it was crumbling. Ethan's birth mother was in his nursery. She had been coming for 8 months. She had been holding his son, singing to him, loving him. And Ethan knew. Somehow, impossibly, Ethan knew who she was. Jonathan didn't confront Rosa that morning. He watched her leave through the service entrance, her face carefully neutral, no trace of the tears she had shed in the nursery. He watched her disappear into the elevator. Then he went to the nursery and picked up his son. Ethan looked at him with those dark eyes, Rosa's eyes, he now realized, and immediately started to fuss. "Shh," Jonathan said. "It's okay. It's Daddy." But Ethan twisted in his arms, looking toward the door, looking for someone who wasn't there anymore. "Ma," he said, his voice small and confused. "Ma?" Jonathan held him tighter. "I know, buddy," he whispered. "I know." That night, Jonathan told Melissa everything. He showed her the security footage. He showed her the adoption records with the partially visible name. He showed her Rosa Martinez's employee file, and he told her what he had heard Rosa say in the nursery. Melissa watched the videos in silence. Her face grew paler with each one. "She's been in our home for 8 months, she finally said. 8 months, Jonathan, coming into our nursery, touching our son." "I know. And you didn't tell me until now. I only figured it out a few days ago." Melissa stood up abruptly. "I want her arrested." "For what? She hasn't broken any laws." "She's stalking us, stalking him. She's cleaning our apartment. That's her job. Her job doesn't include holding our baby and calling herself his mother." "She is his mother," Jonathan said quietly. Melissa's face twisted. "Don't you ever say that again. I am his mother. I am. I've been here every single day. I've changed every diaper, given every bottle, held him through every screaming fit. I've earned that title. I'm not saying you haven't." She gave him up. She made that choice. She doesn't get to come back now and act like nothing happened. "She's not acting like nothing happened. She's grieving Melissa. She's been grieving for 2 years. And that's my problem." Jonathan looked at his wife. The woman he loved, the woman he had built a life with, and saw something he had never seen before. Fear. Pure, raw, desperate fear. "You're scared," he said softly. "Of course I'm scared." Melissa's voice cracked. "She's his birth mother, his real mother, and he said..." She couldn't finish. "He said, 'Ma,'" Jonathan finished for her. His first word, and he said it to her. Melissa collapsed onto the couch, her hands covering her face. "What if he never says it to me?" she whispered. "What if he never looks at me the way he looks at her? What if I'm always second best?" Jonathan sat beside her and pulled her into his arms. "You're not second best," he said. "You're his mother. Nothing changes that." "But what do we do about her?" Jonathan was quiet for a long moment. "I don't know," he finally admitted. "I honestly don't know." The next morning, Melissa did something impulsive. While Jonathan was at work and the new nanny was watching Ethan, she drove to Queens. She found Rosa Martinez's building, a rundown 5-story walk-up in a neighborhood that made her nervous to park her BMW. She climbed 4 flights of stairs and knocked on apartment 4C. Rosa opened the door in sweatpants and a faded t-shirt. When she saw Melissa, her face went white. "Mrs. Carter? We need to talk." Rosa stood frozen for several seconds. Then she stepped aside. Melissa entered the apartment and stopped. The space was barely bigger than her walk-in closet. A twin bed against one wall, a hot plate on a tiny counter, a bathroom door that didn't close all the way, and on the nightstand a single photo in a cheap frame. Melissa walked over and picked it up. It was a Polaroid, a newborn baby cradled in Rosa's arms. The same dark hair, the same dark eyes, the same birthmark on his wrist. "That's the only thing I have from the hospital," Rosa said quietly. "They let me keep one photo." Melissa stared at the image. At Rosa's face, younger, thinner, devastated, looking down at the baby she was about to lose. "Why?" Melissa asked without turning around. "Why did you give him up?" "Because I had nothing." Rosa's voice was hollow. "No money, no home, no family. I was living in a shelter. I couldn't even feed myself, Mrs. Carter. How was I supposed to take care of a baby?" "You could have found a way." "You think I didn't try?" Rosa's voice rose. "You think I wanted to give him up? You think I woke up one morning and decided I didn't want to be a mother?" Melissa turned to face her. Rosa's eyes were red, her hands clenched at her sides. "I loved him from the moment I knew he existed," Rosa said. "I talked to him every night while he grew inside me. I sang to him. I promised him I would always be there. And then I held him for 48 hours and fell so in love that I couldn't breathe." Her voice broke. "Signing those papers was the hardest thing I have ever done. It took everything I had. And I told myself I was doing the right thing, that he would have a better life, that someone else could give him what I couldn't." "Then why come back?" Melissa demanded. "Why take this job? Why sneak into his nursery?" "I didn't know," Rosa said. "I swear to God, I didn't know he would be there. The company assigned me randomly. When I walked into that nursery and saw him, when I recognized him..." She stopped, unable to continue. Melissa watched her cry. Part of her wanted to feel nothing. Part of her wanted to see Rosa as the enemy, the threat to her family, the woman trying to steal her son. But another part of her, the part that had held Ethan through 1,000 screaming fits, that had prayed for him to look at her with love, that had wondered every single day if she was enough, understood. "He calms for you," Melissa said quietly. "He screams all day with us, but the moment you hold him, he sleeps." Rosa nodded, wiping her face. "Why?" "I don't know. Maybe he remembers. Maybe something in him knows my voice, my heartbeat. Or maybe I'm fooling myself." "His first word was Ma," Melissa said. "He said it to you." Rosa closed her eyes, fresh tears spilling down her cheeks. "I heard," she whispered. The two women stood in silence for a long moment. Two mothers, one child, an impossible situation with no good answer. "What do you want?" Melissa finally asked. "What's your endgame here?" "I don't have an endgame. I just wanted to see him. To know he was okay. That's all I ever wanted." "You expect me to believe that? You expect me to believe you don't want him back?" Rosa looked Melissa directly in the eyes. "Of course I want him back. I want him back every second of every day. I dream about him. I wake up reaching for him. I see his face in every baby I pass on the street." Her voice hardened. "But wanting something doesn't mean I'll take it. He's your son now. You can give him things I never could. A home, a future, a life that doesn't include food stamps and eviction notices." "Then what do you want from us?" Rosa was quiet for a long moment. "Don't erase me," she finally said. "That's all. Don't make me a villain. Don't tell him his birth mother was some monster who threw him away, because that's not what happened. I loved him. I still love him, and I gave him up because that love was the only thing I had to give." Melissa stood there holding the Polaroid photo, looking at the woman who had carried her son. She should hate her. She should call the police, get a restraining order, make sure Rosa Martinez never came near Ethan again. But instead, she heard herself say something she hadn't planned. "He's not sleeping. Since you stopped coming, he screams all night. He won't let anyone hold him." Rosa's face crumpled. "I know it doesn't make sense," Melissa continued. "I know it shouldn't matter who holds him, but it does. It matters to him." She put the photo back on the nightstand. "I don't know what to do," she admitted. "I don't know how to fix this, but I know that watching my son suffer isn't working. Something has to change." Rosa stared at her. "What are you saying?" Melissa walked to the door. I'm saying I need to think about all of this, about what's best for him. She paused with her hand on the doorknob. Don't come back to our apartment, not yet. I need time. Then she left, closing the door behind her. Rosa stood alone in her tiny apartment, her heart pounding. Something had shifted. She didn't know what it meant. She didn't know if Melissa would have her arrested or offer her something else entirely. But for the first time in 2 years, she felt something she had almost forgotten. Hope. Melissa sat in her car outside Rosa's building for 20 minutes before she could drive. Her hands gripped the steering wheel so hard her knuckles turned white. Her mind kept replaying the image of that Polaroid photo, Rosa's devastated face, the baby she was about to lose, the same baby who now slept in Melissa's nursery. The same baby who screamed at Melissa's touch but melted into Rosa's arms. She pulled out her phone and stared at it. She should call Jonathan. She should tell him where she had been, what she had done, what Rosa had said. But instead, she just sat there watching the entrance to Rosa's building, thinking about the woman who lived in that tiny apartment with nothing but a photograph and a broken heart. 3 days later, Ethan stopped eating. It started slowly. He refused his morning bottle, turning his head away no matter how Melissa tried to coax him. By afternoon, he had rejected every food she offered, the pureed carrots he usually loved, the mashed bananas, even the animal crackers that were his favorite. He's just being picky, Jonathan said when he came home from work. Toddlers go through phases. This isn't a phase, Melissa's voice was raw. He hasn't eaten anything in 36 hours. Jonathan picked up Ethan and tried to give him the bottle himself. Ethan twisted away his face, screwing up his mouth, opening in that familiar wail. Ma, he cried. Ma, ma, ma. Melissa flinched like she had been slapped. He keeps saying that, she whispered. Over and over. He's calling for her. Jonathan didn't respond. He didn't need to. They both knew who Ethan was calling for. On the 4th day, Melissa took Ethan to the pediatrician. Dr. Morrison examined him thoroughly, temperature, ears, throat reflexes. She checked his weight and frowned at the chart. He's lost almost a pound since his last visit, she said. That's significant for a child his age. What's wrong with him? Melissa demanded. Physically, nothing I can find. His vitals are normal. No sign of infection or illness. Dr. Morrison paused. But I'm concerned about his behavior. You said he's been refusing food and crying constantly. For almost a week now. Has anything changed in his environment? New people changes in routine. Melissa hesitated. She thought about Rosa, about the nursery visits that had stopped, about the woman whose arms were the only place Ethan found peace. No, she lied. Nothing has changed. Dr. Scheer. Morrison studied her for a long moment, and Melissa had the uncomfortable feeling that the doctor knew she wasn't telling the whole truth. Mrs. Carter, I've been practicing pediatrics for 30 years. I've seen a lot of difficult babies, but Ethan's case is unusual. What do you mean? His symptoms don't match any medical condition I can identify. The crying, the food refusal, the sleep disturbances, they're consistent with one thing. What? Grief. Dr. Morrison's voice was gentle. Your son is grieving. Melissa felt the floor shift beneath her feet. He's 2 years old, she said. He can't be grieving. He doesn't understand. Children understand more than we give them credit for. They may not have words for their feelings, but they feel them deeply. Has Ethan lost anyone recently? A caregiver? A family member? Someone he was attached to? Melissa couldn't speak. Mrs. Carter? No. Melissa whispered, No one. But the word felt like ash in her mouth. That night, Melissa told Jonathan about her visit to Rosa's apartment. She told him about the Polaroid photo, about Rosa's tiny studio, about the words Rosa had spoken through her tears. She told him about the desperation she had seen in Rosa's eyes, the same desperation she now saw in Ethan's. Jonathan listened without interrupting. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. What did the doctor say? He finally asked. She said he's grieving. Grieving for Rosa? Melissa nodded, her eyes filling with tears. I hate this, she said. I hate that he wants her. I hate that I'm not enough. I hate that I've done everything right, and it still doesn't matter. You are enough, Jonathan said. Then why is he starving himself? Why is he crying her name? Jonathan pulled her into his arms. She sobbed against his chest, all the fear and anger and jealousy she had been holding back pouring out of her. What do we do? She asked when she could finally speak again. I can't watch him waste away. I can't listen to him cry for someone else. Jonathan was quiet for a moment. Maybe, he said carefully, we need to let her see him. Melissa pulled back. No. Just hear me out. I said no, I am not bringing that woman into our home. She's already been in our home for 8 months. That was different. That was Melissa stopped. She didn't know how to finish. That was what? Jonathan pressed. Secret hidden. At least if we do it openly, we control the situation. We set the rules. We decide when and how and for how long. And what happens when she decides she wants more, when she decides visitation isn't enough? We cross that bridge when we come to it. No. Melissa's voice hardened. I won't share him. He's my son. He's our son, Jonathan corrected. And right now, our son is suffering. He's not eating. He's not sleeping. He's lost almost a pound in less than a week. How much longer are we going to let our pride destroy him? Melissa stared at her husband. This isn't about pride, she said coldly. This is about protecting our family. Protecting our family from what? A woman who scrubs floors for a living, a woman who gave up her child because she had no other choice. She's not a threat, Melissa. She's a tragedy. She could take him from us. Legally, she can't. She signed away her rights. The adoption is final. Then why does it feel like I'm losing him? The question hung in the air between them. Jonathan had no answer. 1 week after Melissa's visit to Queens, Rosa received a phone call. She was at her second job washing dishes at a restaurant in Chelsea when her phone buzzed in her pocket. She wasn't supposed to have her phone on her during shifts, but she always kept it close, just in case. The caller ID showed an unknown number. Rosa stepped into the alley behind the restaurant and answered. Miss Martinez, a woman's voice, formal, cold. Yes, this is Margaret Chen. I'm an attorney representing Jonathan and Melissa Carter. Rosa's blood turned to ice. I'm calling to inform you that my clients are aware of your activities at their residence over the past 8 months. They have documented evidence of your unauthorized contact with their minor child. I didn't do anything wrong, Rosa said, her voice shaking. Miss Martinez, I strongly advise you not to say anything further without legal representation. My clients are prepared to pursue criminal charges if necessary. However, they have authorized me to offer you an alternative. Rosa pressed her back against the brick wall of the alley, her heart pounding. What alternative? A meeting. Tomorrow at 2 p.m. My office is at 425 Park Avenue, 31st floor. You will come alone. You will not record the conversation, and you will be prepared to sign a legally binding agreement. What kind of agreement? One that protects everyone involved, including the child. Rosa closed her eyes. And if I don't come, then my clients will proceed with legal action. You could face charges of trespassing, harassment, and stalking. Given your financial situation, I doubt you could afford adequate defense. The choice is yours, Miss Martinez. The line went dead. Rosa slid down the wall until she was sitting on the dirty ground of the alley, her phone clutched in her trembling hands. They were going to take everything from her, her job, her freedom, her last connection to her son. She had been foolish to think Melissa's visit meant anything. Foolish to hope. Hope was a luxury she couldn't afford. Rosa didn't sleep that night. She sat on her bed, staring at the Polaroid photo, trying to memorize every detail of Ethan's newborn face. The way his eyes had looked when they opened for that brief moment. The weight of him in her arms. The sound of his breathing. If they put her in jail, she might never see him again, even from a distance, even through a window. She thought about running. Packing a bag, getting on a bus, disappearing into some other city where no one knew her name. But she had nowhere to go. No money, no family, no one who would take her in. And even if she ran, she would be leaving Ethan behind. Again. At 6 a.m., Rosa made a decision. She would go to the meeting, she would hear what they had to say, and whatever happened next, at least she would face it head on. She owed Ethan that much. The law office of Chen & Associates occupied the entire 31st floor of a gleaming skyscraper on Park Avenue. Rosa had never been in a building like this. The lobby alone was bigger than her entire apartment. The elevator was silent and fast, whisking her upward before she had time to prepare herself. When the doors opened, a receptionist in a designer suit smiled at her. Miss Martinez, they're expecting you, right this way. Rosa followed her down a long hallway lined with abstract art and closed doors. Her worn sneakers squeaked against the polished marble floor. She was acutely aware of how out of place she looked. Her best dress was still cheap. Her hair hastily pulled back, her face pale with exhaustion. The receptionist stopped at a large conference room and opened the door. Inside, 3 people sat at a long table, Margaret Chen severe in a black blazer, Jonathan Carter, his expression unreadable, and Melissa Carter, who wouldn't meet Rosa's eyes. Please sit down, Miss Martinez, Margaret said. Rosa took the chair across from them. Her hands were shaking. She folded them in her lap to hide the tremor. "Let's get straight to business," Margaret continued. "My clients have a proposal for you. I suggest you listen carefully before responding." Rosa nodded. Margaret opened a folder and pulled out a stack of documents. "First, let me be clear about your legal situation. Over the past 8 months, you have entered the Carter residence under false pretenses and made unauthorized contact with their minor child on at least 32 separate occasions. While your employment gave you legitimate access to the property, your interactions with the child exceeded the scope of that access. This constitutes—" "She knows what she did," Melissa interrupted. Her voice was flat. "We don't need to go through every detail." Margaret paused. "Very well. Mrs. Carter, would you like to explain the proposal?" Melissa finally looked at Rosa. Her eyes were red-rimmed, shadowed with exhaustion. She looked almost as broken as Rosa felt. "Ethan is sick," Melissa said. "He stopped eating. He barely sleeps. He cries all the time." Her voice cracked. "He's calling for you over and over. Ma, 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 that's all he says." Rosa's heart shattered. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I didn't—" "Of course you didn't know. You're not there anymore." Melissa's tone sharpened. "Because of what you did, I fired you, and now my son is suffering." "Melissa," Jonathan said quietly. "No, she needs to hear this." Melissa leaned forward. "I hate you. I want you to know that. I hate that you exist. I hate that my son loves you more than he loves me. I hate that I've given him everything and you've given him nothing, and somehow you're still the one he wants." Rosa felt tears sliding down her cheeks but didn't bother to wipe them away. "But I love him more than I hate you," Melissa continued. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to sign an agreement. It will give you supervised visitation rights 1 hour twice a week at our apartment with either me or Jonathan present at all times. You will not take him anywhere. You will not be alone with him. You will not try to establish yourself as his mother in any way. You are a family friend. That's all. Do you understand?" Rosa stared at her. You're letting me see him. I'm letting him see you. There's a difference." "I don't understand. You said you wanted to have me arrested." "I did. I still do." Melissa's voice was raw. "But my son is starving himself because he misses you, and I would rather share him with you than watch him die." The room went silent. Rosa couldn't breathe. She had expected threats, demands, ultimatums. She had expected to walk out of this room in handcuffs. She had not expected this. "There are conditions," Margaret interjected. "The agreement includes a strict confidentiality clause. You will not discuss the arrangement with anyone outside this room. You will not post on social media about the Carter family or the child. Any violation will result in immediate termination of the agreement and potential legal action." Rosa nodded numbly. "Additionally, the agreement includes a clause regarding custody. You will formally acknowledge that you have no legal claim to the child and will not seek custody at any point in the future. This is non-negotiable." "I understand," Rosa said. Margaret slid the documents across the table. "Take your time to read through everything. If you have questions, now is the time to ask." Rosa looked at the papers. Pages and pages of legal language she barely understood, but she didn't need to understand every word. She understood what mattered. She was going to see her son again. "I'll sign," Rosa said. "Don't you want to read it first?" Jonathan asked. "I trust you." Rosa looked at Melissa. "I know you don't believe that, but it's true. You could have destroyed me. You still could. But you're giving me a chance instead. I don't know why, but I'm grateful." Melissa's expression didn't soften. "I'm not doing this for you." "I know. You're doing it for him. That's why I trust you." Rosa picked up the pen and signed every page Margaret indicated. Her hand was steady now. Whatever fear she had felt walking into this room was gone. When she finished, Margaret gathered the documents. "The first visitation will be tomorrow at 3 p.m. I'll email you the details. Don't be late." Rosa stood up. Her legs felt weak, but she forced herself to remain upright. "Thank you," she said to Jonathan and Melissa. "I know this wasn't easy." Jonathan nodded. Melissa said nothing. Rosa walked out of the conference room down the long hallway into the elevator. She made it all the way to the lobby before her legs gave out. She sank onto a bench near the entrance and buried her face in her hands. She was going to see Ethan tomorrow. For the first time in weeks, Rosa Martinez smiled. The next afternoon, Rosa stood outside the Carter penthouse, her finger hovering over the doorbell. She had changed clothes 3 times that morning. She had showered twice. She had barely slept, too anxious to close her eyes. And now she was here, about to walk into the home of the people who had every reason to hate her, about to see the son she had given away. Rosa pressed the bell. Jonathan opened the door. He looked tired, but there was something else in his expression. Something that might have been relief. "Come in," he said. Rosa stepped inside. The apartment looked the same, all gleaming surfaces and expensive furniture, but it felt different somehow. Heavier. Sadder. Melissa was standing in the living room holding Ethan. Rosa's breath caught. Ethan looked smaller than she remembered, paler. His eyes had dark circles under them and his cheeks looked thinner. But the moment he saw Rosa, everything changed. His face lit up. His whole body reached toward her arms. Stretching fingers grasping. "Ma," he cried. "Ma. Melissa's face tightened, but she walked toward Rosa and held out the baby. "Here," she said. "Take him." Rosa's hands trembled as she reached for her son. The moment she touched him, the moment she felt his weight settle into her arms, something inside her broke open. "Hi, baby," she whispered. "Hi, my sweet boy." Ethan grabbed her shirt and buried his face against her shoulder. His little body, which had been rigid with tension, went completely limp. He let out a long, shuddering breath. "Ma," he mumbled contentedly. "Mama." Rosa held him close, tears streaming down her face. She didn't try to hide them. She didn't care who saw. She had her son in her arms again. Nothing else mattered. Melissa watched them from across the room. Her arms were crossed, her expression unreadable. Jonathan stood beside her. "He's already calmer," he said quietly. "I can see that." This was the right decision. Melissa didn't respond. Rosa carried Ethan to the couch and sat down, cradling him against her chest. She began to hum the lullaby automatically, the same melody she had sung to him in the hospital, the same one she had sung during those stolen moments in the nursery. Within minutes, Ethan's eyes grew heavy. "He hasn't slept in 3 days," Jonathan said, his voice hushed. "We've tried everything." Rosa looked down at her son's peaceful face. His breathing was slow and even. His grip on her shirt had loosened as sleep claimed him. "He just needed to know I was still here," Rosa whispered. Melissa made a sound something between a laugh and a sob. "Do you know how many nights I've held him like that?" she said. "How many hours I've spent walking the floors, singing every song I know, trying everything I could think of, and you walk in here and he falls asleep in 5 minutes." "I'm sorry," Rosa said. "Don't." Melissa's voice sharpened. "Don't apologize. It makes it worse." Rosa fell silent. The hour passed too quickly. Rosa held Ethan while he slept, memorizing the weight of him, the smell of his hair, the sound of his soft breathing. She didn't want to move. She didn't want to speak. She just wanted to exist in this moment for as long as possible. But eventually Jonathan looked at his watch. "It's been an hour, Sumi," he said. Rosa's chest tightened. "Already? You can put him in his crib. He should stay asleep for a while." Rosa didn't want to let go. Every instinct in her body screamed to hold on, to never release him again. But she had signed an agreement. She had made promises. She stood up slowly and carried Ethan to the nursery. The room was exactly as she remembered the moon nightlight, the elephant mobile, the expensive furniture she could never afford. She placed him in the crib gently, carefully, as if he might shatter if she moved too fast. He stirred but didn't wake. "I'll come back," she whispered to him. "I promise. 2 days. That's all, and then I'll be here again." She touched his cheek one last time, then forced herself to step back. Jonathan was waiting at the nursery door. He walked her to the front entrance. "Thank you," Rosa said, "for convincing her to do this." "I didn't convince her. She convinced herself." Jonathan paused. "She's not as cold as she seems, you know. She's just scared." "I know. Give her time. This is hard for her." "It's hard for all of us." Jonathan nodded. "Same time on Thursday." "I'll be here." Rosa walked to the elevator. Before the doors closed, she looked back at the penthouse entrance. Melissa was standing there watching her go. Their eyes met for just a moment, then the doors slid shut. The first month of visitation was agony for everyone. Melissa insisted on being present for every visit. She sat in the corner of the living room watching Rosa hold Ethan, her face a mask of barely controlled emotion. Rosa tried to ignore her. She focused on Ethan, singing to him, playing with him, helping him eat the foods he had been refusing. The change in him was immediate and dramatic. Within a week, he had gained back the weight he lost. He was sleeping through the night again. The screaming fits had stopped almost entirely, but every time Rosa visited, she could feel Melissa's eyes on her. Judging? Resenting. On the 3rd week, something shifted. Rosa was sitting on the floor with Ethan stacking blocks. He knocked them down with gleeful abandon, laughing at the crash. Again, he demanded. Again, Ma. Rosa winced at the word. She glanced at Melissa, expecting anger, but Melissa's expression was different, softer, almost wistful. He never laughs like that with me, Melissa said quietly. Rosa didn't know how to respond. I read to him every night, Melissa continued. I sing to him. I play all the games the parenting books recommend, and he tolerates me. That's the best word for it. He tolerates me like I'm a necessary inconvenience. He loves you, Rosa said. Does he? Or does he just accept me because he has no choice? Rosa put down the blocks. Ethan protested, but she ignored him. Mrs. Carter. Melissa, if we're going to do this, you should call me Melissa. Rosa took a breath. Melissa, your son loves you. I see it every time I come here. The way he looks for you when he wakes up. The way he reaches for you when he's scared. He knows you're his mother. Then why does he call you Ma? The question hung in the air. I don't know, Rosa admitted. Maybe because I carried him. Maybe because he remembers something from before he was born. Or maybe it's just a sound he makes and we're both reading too much into it. Melissa was quiet for a long moment. My mother used to say that children know things we've forgotten, she finally said. That they're closer to, I don't know, something bigger than us. And maybe that's why he responds to you. Because he remembers something I can never give him. You give him everything, Rosa said. Everything except peace. Rosa looked at Ethan, who had gone back to stacking blocks by himself. Can I tell you something? She asked. Melissa nodded. When I was pregnant, I had nothing. I was sleeping in a shelter. I had no money, no family, no idea how I was going to survive. But I had him. Rosa's voice trembled. Every night I would put my hand on my belly and talk to him. I told him about my mother who died when I was 20. I told him about my father who died when I was 12. I told him about all the people I had lost and how scared I was to lose him too. Melissa said nothing, but her eyes were fixed on Rosa's face. And I told him that no matter what happened, no matter where he ended up, I would always love him, that my love would find him even if I couldn't. Rosa wiped her eyes. Maybe that's what he remembers. Not me specifically, just the love, the promise. Melissa stood up suddenly. For a moment, Rosa thought she was going to ask her to leave. Instead, Melissa walked to the couch and sat down, not in the corner, but on the cushion closest to where Rosa and Ethan were playing. Tell me about him, Melissa said. When he was born, what was he like? Rosa stared at her. You want to know? I've read the adoption file 100 times, but it's just facts and dates. I want to know what he was actually like. Rosa felt something shift between them, a wall coming down just slightly. He was perfect, Rosa said. 7 pounds 4 ounces. He didn't cry at first. The doctor had to stimulate him PEM, and when he finally did, it was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. Melissa leaned forward listening. And for the first time, Rosa told her the whole story. 2 months into the visitation arrangement, Jonathan made a suggestion. You should come to his birthday party, child, he said to Rosa. He's turning 2 next Saturday. It would mean a lot to him. Rosa looked at Melissa, waiting for the objection, but Melissa just shrugged. It's a small gathering, family and a few friends. You would be there as a family friend. Are you sure? No, Melissa admitted. But Ethan would want you there. And at this point, that's what matters. Rosa came to the party. She wore the nicest dress she owned, a simple blue thing she had found at a thrift store, and brought a gift wrapped in paper she had decorated herself. The apartment was full of people Rosa didn't know. Jonathan's parents, elegant and reserved. Melissa's sister, loud and friendly. A few couples with children around Ethan's age. Rosa stood near the door, feeling completely out of place. Then Ethan saw her. He was in Melissa's arms, wearing a tiny suit and a birthday crown that kept sliding off his head. The moment his eyes found Rosa, his face lit up. Ma, he shouted, squirming to get down. Ma here, Ma here. Every conversation in the room stopped. Rosa felt the blood drain from her face. She looked at Melissa, expecting fury, but Melissa's expression was calm, almost rehearsed. Ethan, sweetie, that's Miss Rosa. Remember she's our friend? Ma, Ethan insisted. Finally, occasionally wiggling free, he ran across the room and threw himself at Rosa's legs. Rosa picked him up, her heart hammering. Hi, birthday boy, she said, trying to keep her voice light. You look so handsome. Ethan grabbed her face with both hands. Ma stay party. Yes, sweetheart, I'm staying for the whole party." The other guests were staring. Rosa could feel their questions, their confusion, their judgment. Jonathan stepped forward smoothly. "Rosa is an old friend of the family," he said. "She was actually the first person to hold Ethan after he was born. Isn't that right, Rosa?" Rosa caught on immediately. "That's right. I was there at the hospital. He was the most beautiful baby I'd ever seen." Bild. The explanation seemed to satisfy most of the guests. Conversations resumed. The tension eased. But Melissa's sister cornered Rosa near the punch bowl an hour later. "So you're the birth mother," she said quietly. "Melissa told me." Rosa froze. "I don't know what—" "It's okay. I'm not going to say anything." The sister, her name was Catherine, studied Rosa with curious eyes. "I just wanted to meet you, to see who you were." "And what do you see?" Catherine smiled. "I see someone who loves that little boy as much as my sister does, maybe more. I would never try to take him from her." "I know. If I thought you would, I wouldn't be talking to you right now." Catherine paused. "For what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. All of you. It's messy and complicated and probably going to blow up at some point. But for now, Ethan is happy. That's what matters." Rosa looked across the room at her son, who was now opening presents with Melissa's help. He was laughing, his face covered in cake frosting his birthday crown, completely askew. "Yes," Rosa said softly. "That's what matters?" 3 months after the visitation agreement began, Melissa asked Rosa to stay for dinner. Rosa almost said no. The visits were supposed to be 1 hour twice a week. Those were the rules. That was the agreement. But Ethan was clinging to her leg, refusing to let go, and Melissa looked exhausted. "Please," Melissa said. "Jonathan's working late. I can't handle bedtime alone, not tonight." So Rosa stayed. She helped feed Ethan dinner. She helped give him a bath. She helped put on his pajamas and brush his tiny teeth. And then for the first time, she helped put him to bed. "Will you sing to him?" Melissa asked. "The song he likes." Rosa settled into the rocking chair beside the crib. Ethan was already drowsy, his eyes half closed, his thumb in his mouth. She began to hum the lullaby, the same one she had sung in the hospital, the same one she had sung during those stolen moments in the nursery. Ethan's eyes drifted closed. Melissa stood in the doorway watching. When the song ended, Rosa started to stand. "Don't," Melissa said softly. "Stay for a minute. I want to ask you something." Rosa sat back down. "What is it?" Melissa was quiet for a long moment. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Do you think I'm a good mother?" Rosa stared at her. "What? Be honest. I need to know. Do you think I'm a good mother to him?" "Of course you are. Why would you even—" "Because I don't feel like one." Melissa's voice cracked. "I feel like I'm failing. Every single day. I read all the books. I follow all the advice. I do everything I'm supposed to do, and it's still not enough. He still cries for you." Rosa stood up and walked to the doorway. "Melissa, listen to me. You are his mother. Not me. You. You're the one who feeds him every day. You're the one who takes him to the doctor. You're the one who will teach him to ride a bike and help him with homework and hold him when his heart gets broken. I gave him life, but you're giving him a childhood. That matters more than anything I could ever do." Melissa's eyes filled with tears. "Then why does it hurt so much?" she whispered. "Watching him with you." "Because you love him," Rosa said simply. "And love always hurts." They stood there in the darkened nursery, two mothers united by one child, bound together by a pain neither of them had chosen. "I don't hate you anymore," Melissa finally said. "I thought you should know that." "I never hated you," Rosa replied. "I was grateful to you, even when it hurt." Melissa wiped her eyes. "This is insane, you know, this whole situation." "I know. It shouldn't work. I know. But somehow it does." Rosa looked at Ethan sleeping peacefully in his crib. "Somehow it does," she agreed. That night, something changed between them. They weren't friends. They might never be friends. But they weren't enemies anymore either. They were two women doing their best to love the same child. And maybe Rosa thought as she rode the subway back to Queens that was enough. 6 months after the visitation agreement began, Rosa received a phone call that changed everything. She was at her morning job cleaning an office building in Midtown when her phone buzzed. The caller ID showed Melissa's number. Rosa's heart stopped. Melissa never called. Not once in 6 months. If there was a scheduling change or a message about Ethan, Jonathan was always the one who reached out. Rosa stepped into an empty conference room and answered. "Hello?" "Rosa." Melissa's voice was strange, tight, controlled. I need you to come to the apartment right now." "What's wrong? Is Ethan okay?" "Ethan is fine. Just come, please." The line went dead. Rosa stared at her phone. Her hands were shaking. She told her supervisor she had a family emergency and ran out of the building without waiting for a response. The subway ride to Central Park South took 23 minutes. It felt like 23 hours. Rosa's mind raced through every possible scenario. Had someone found out about their arrangement? Had the Carters changed their minds? Had something happened to Ethan that Melissa wasn't telling her? By the time she reached the penthouse, she was barely breathing. Jonathan opened the door. His face was pale, his jaw tight. "Come in," he said. "We need to talk." Rosa followed him into the living room. Melissa was sitting on the couch, her posture rigid, her hands clasped in her lap. Ethan was nowhere to be seen. "Where is he?" Rosa asked immediately. "Where's Ethan?" "He's with my mother," Melissa said. "I needed him out of the apartment for this conversation." Rosa's chest tightened. "What conversation? What's going on?" Jonathan and Melissa exchanged a look. Something passed between them, fear, resignation, something Rosa couldn't identify. "Sit down," Jonathan said. "Please." Rosa sat on the edge of an armchair, her body tense, ready to run or fight or do whatever she needed to do. Melissa took a deep breath. "My sister knows about you," she said. "She figured it out at Ethan's birthday party. I had to tell her the truth." "I know," Rosa said carefully. "She talked to me that day. She seemed understanding." "She was. She is." Melissa paused. "But she told someone else." Rosa's blood ran cold. "Who?" "Our mother." The words hit Rosa like a physical blow. She had never met Jonathan's parents or Melissa's mother. They were just names, abstract figures on the periphery of Ethan's life. But she knew enough to understand that wealthy families like the Carters had reputations to protect, secrets to keep. "Your mother knows I'm Ethan's birth mother. She knows everything, the adoption, the cleaning job, the visitation arrangement." Melissa's voice hardened, and she's furious. Rosa stood up abruptly. "I should go. I shouldn't be here." "Sit down," Jonathan said firmly. "We're not finished." Rosa sat. "My mother-in-law called me this morning," Jonathan continued. "She's threatening to go to the press. She says this whole situation is a scandal waiting to happen. A billionaire family secretly allowing their adopted child's birth mother into their home. She thinks it will destroy us." "I never wanted to destroy anyone," Rosa whispered. "We know that," Melissa said. "But my mother doesn't care what you wanted. She cares about appearances, about the family name, about what people will think." Rosa felt the walls closing in. "So what happens now? You're going to end the visitation?" Jonathan and Melissa exchanged another look. "No," Melissa said. Rosa stared at her. "No. My mother gave me an ultimatum. Either I cut you out of Ethan's life completely, or she's going to the tabloids with the whole story." "Then you have to cut me out." The words tore Rosa apart, but she forced them out anyway. "I won't let you destroy your family because of me." "You're not listening." Melissa leaned forward, her eyes fierce. "I said no. I told my mother that if she goes to the press, I will never speak to her again. I will cut her out of Ethan's life. She will never see her grandson again." Rosa couldn't breathe. "You did that for me." "I did it for Ethan." Melissa's voice softened slightly. "He needs you, Rosa. I've watched him for 6 months. I've seen how he lights up when you walk through the door. I've seen how peacefully he sleeps after you've been here. And I will not take that away from him. Not for my mother. Not for anyone." Rosa's eyes filled with tears. "But your family. My family is Jonathan and Ethan. Everyone else is optional." Jonathan reached over and took his wife's hand. "We wanted you to know what's happening. My mother-in-law might still go to the press. We can't control what she does, but whatever happens, we're not going to abandon you." Rosa sat in stunned silence. In all the months since the visitation began, she had been waiting for the other shoe to drop, waiting for the Carters to change their minds, to decide she was too much trouble to push her back into the shadows where she belonged. She had never expected them to fight for her. "I don't know what to say," she finally managed. "You don't have to say anything," Melissa replied. "Just be here on Thursday like always. Ethan's been asking for you all week." Rosa nodded, wiping her eyes. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, this fragile arrangement could actually last. 2 weeks later, Melissa's mother made good on her threat. Rosa was working her evening shift at the restaurant when her phone exploded with notifications. Text messages from numbers she didn't recognize. voicemails piling up. A flood of activity that made no sense until she opened a news app and saw her own face staring back at her. The headline read, "Billionaire Family's Shocking Secret Birth Mother Working as Their Maid." Rosa's hands went numb. The phone slipped from her fingers and clattered to the floor. The article was everywhere. It had her name, her photo details about her employment history, her financial struggles, the shelter where she had lived during her pregnancy. Someone had dug up everything. Someone had painted her as a desperate woman who had wormed her way into a wealthy family's life. The comments were brutal. "She's clearly after their money. What kind of mother gives up her baby and then stalks him? The Carters should get a restraining order. Gold digger trying to cash in." Rosa couldn't read anymore. She grabbed her things and ran out of the restaurant without a word to anyone. The subway ride home was a blur of tears and panic. People stared at her. She didn't know if it was because they recognized her face or because she was visibly falling apart. When she reached her apartment, her landlord was waiting outside her door. "Miss Martinez." His voice was cold. "I've been getting calls all day. Reporters. They want to know if you live here." "I'm sorry. I don't want trouble in my building. I'm going to need you to find somewhere else to stay." Rosa stared at him. "You're evicting me." "I'm asking you to leave voluntarily. If you don't, I'll start formal proceedings tomorrow." "I have a lease." "Your lease says no illegal activity. Whatever you've been doing with that rich family, it doesn't look good. I can't have reporters camped outside my building." Rosa wanted to argue. She wanted to explain that she hadn't done anything wrong, that the story was twisted, that she wasn't who they were making her out to be. But she was too tired, too broken. "I'll be out by the end of the week," she heard herself say. Her landlord nodded and walked away. Rosa unlocked her door and stepped inside her tiny apartment. She sat on the edge of her bed and stared at the wall. Everything she had built, its fit to the fragile stability, the carefully constructed life, the precious arrangement with the Carters, was crumbling around her, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Rosa's phone rang at 11:47 p.m. She almost didn't answer. She had been ignoring calls for hours, terrified of what new horror awaited on the other end. But the caller ID showed Melissa's number. Rosa picked up. "Rosa?" Melissa's voice was urgent. "Are you okay? I've been trying to reach you." "I saw the article. It's a hit piece. My mother fed them information and they ran with it. Jonathan has our lawyers working on a response, but these things take time." "I'm being evicted," Rosa said flatly. "What?" "My landlord doesn't want the attention. He's kicking me out." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Where will you go?" "I don't know. A shelter, maybe, if they'll take me." "No," Melissa's voice was firm. "Absolutely not. You're not going to a shelter." "I don't have a choice." "Yes, you do. You have a choice right now. I'm sending a car to pick you up." Rosa's heart stuttered. "What?" "You're coming here, tonight. We have a guest room. You'll stay with us until this blows over." "Melissa, I can't." "Don't argue with me. I'm not asking. This is my mother's mess and I'm going to fix it. Pack whatever you need. The car will be there in 30 minutes. The line went dead. Rosa sat motionless for several seconds, trying to process what had just happened. Melissa Carter, the woman who had once wanted her arrested, who had spent months watching her with barely concealed resentment, was offering her a place to stay. In her home. With Ethan. Rosa looked around her tiny apartment. The peeling walls, the drafty windows. The photograph of Ethan that was the only beautiful thing she owned. Then she started to pack. The guest room in the Carter penthouse was larger than Rosa's entire apartment. She stood in the doorway, her single duffel bag clutched in her hands, unable to move. Melissa appeared behind her. "It's just a room," Melissa said. "You can put your things in the closet. The bathroom is through that door." "This is too much." "It's temporary, just until we find you a new place." "Why are you doing this?" Melissa was quiet for a moment. "Because Ethan loves you," she finally said, "and because I'm starting to understand why." Rosa looked at her. "6 months ago, I thought you were the enemy," Melissa continued. "I thought you were trying to steal my son, but you weren't. You were just trying to love him, the same thing I was doing." She paused. "We're not so different, Rosa. We're just two women who would do anything for the same child." Rosa's eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't deserve this." "Maybe not, but Ethan does." Melissa stepped back. "Get some sleep. It's been a long day. We can figure out the rest tomorrow." She closed the door softly behind her. Rosa stood alone in the beautiful room, surrounded by luxuries she had never known, and cried until she had nothing left. The next morning, Rosa woke to the sound of small feet running down the hallway. She sat up in bed, disoriented. For a moment, she didn't remember where she was. Then everything came flooding back: the article, the eviction, Melissa's phone calls, the car that brought her here. Her door burst open. Ethan stood in the doorway, his face split into a huge smile. "Ma!" he shouted. "Ma here, Ma, sleep here?" Rosa's heart broke open. "Yes, baby," she said, opening her arms. "Ma is here." Ethan ran to her and launched himself onto the bed. Rosa caught him and pulled him close, burying her face in his hair. "Ma, stay?" he asked, his voice muffled against her shoulder. "Ma, stay forever?" Rosa didn't know how to answer. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, let alone forever. "Ma is here now," she said. "That's what matters." Ethan seemed satisfied with that answer. He pulled back and grabbed her face with both hands. "Breakfast," he announced. "Pancakes. Ma, come." He wiggled off the bed and ran back down the hallway. Rosa watched him go, her heart full and aching at the same time. She got dressed and followed him to the kitchen. Jonathan was at the stove flipping pancakes. Melissa was sitting at the island with a cup of coffee, scrolling through her phone. They both looked up when Rosa entered. "Good morning," Jonathan said. "How did you sleep?" "Better than I expected." "Sit down. Pancakes are almost ready." Rosa sat at the island, feeling completely out of place. Ethan climbed onto the stool beside her, and immediately started chattering about his dreams, his toys, the bird he had seen outside his window. "Ma, look," he said, showing her a stuffed dinosaur. "His name is Rex. He's my friend." "He's very handsome," Rosa said. "You can hold him, but be careful. He bites." Rosa took the dinosaur solemnly. "I'll be very careful." Melissa watched the interaction with an expression Rosa couldn't read. "The lawyers called this morning," she said. "They're preparing a statement. They want to correct the record about who you are and why you've been in our lives." "What will they say?" "The truth, that the adoption was handled properly, that you didn't seek us out, it was a coincidence, that we've developed a relationship that benefits Ethan." "Will anyone believe it?" "Some will, some won't." Melissa set down her phone. "The important thing is that we control the narrative. Right now, my mother's version is the only one out there. We need to change that." Jonathan brought plates of pancakes to the island. He sat down across from Rosa. "We also need to talk about your living situation," he said. "This arrangement you staying here, it's working for now, but it's not sustainable long term." Rosa nodded. She had been expecting this. "I'll find somewhere else as soon as I can. I just need a few days to—" "That's not what I meant." Jonathan glanced at Melissa. "We've been talking. There's an apartment in this building, 2 floors down. It's smaller than this one, but it's comfortable, safe, close to Ethan." Rosa stared at him. "I can't afford an apartment in this building." "You wouldn't have to. It belongs to Melissa's father. He bought it as an investment years ago and never did anything with it. It's been sitting empty." "I don't understand." Melissa took over. "We're offering it to you, rent-free, for as long as you want it." Rosa's mind went blank. "Why?" "Because you're part of our family now." Melissa said the words carefully as if testing them out. "I know that sounds crazy. 6 months ago I would have laughed at anyone who suggested it. But things have changed. We've changed." She looked at Ethan, who was happily devouring his pancakes. "He needs you, and maybe we need you too." Rosa couldn't speak. "You don't have to decide right now," Jonathan added. "Take some time, think about it, but the offer stands." Rosa looked at Melissa. "You really want me living 2 floors below you permanently?" "Permanently is a long time, but for now, yes." Melissa paused. "I've spent 6 months watching you with my son. I've seen your patience, your kindness, your devotion. You're not the threat I thought you were, Rosa. You're a gift, and I'm tired of being too proud to accept it." Rosa felt tears streaming down her face. She didn't bother wiping them away. "Ma crying," Ethan said, concerned. "Ma sad." "No, baby." Rosa pulled him into a hug. "Ma is happy. Ma is very, very happy." Rosa moved into the apartment 2 weeks later. It was nothing like her old studio in Queens. 2 bedrooms. A real kitchen. A bathroom that actually worked. Windows that looked out over the city instead of a brick wall. The Carters helped her move, which mostly meant Jonathan carrying the single duffel bag that contained everything Rosa owned. "We should get you some furniture," Melissa said, looking around the empty space. "I don't need much. Everyone needs a couch, Rosa. I can get one eventually, when I save up enough." Melissa opened her mouth to argue, then stopped herself. "Okay," she said. "But if you change your mind, let me know." Rosa appreciated that she didn't push. In the months since they had met, Melissa had learned to respect Rosa's pride just as Rosa had learned to respect Melissa's fears. They had both grown. That night, after Melissa and Jonathan had gone back to their apartment, Rosa sat on the floor of her new living room and looked at the empty walls. She had never had this much space to herself. She didn't know what to do with it. Her phone buzzed. A text from Melissa. Ethan wants to know if Ma can come read him a bedtime story. Rosa smiled. She grabbed her keys and headed upstairs. The media storm died down faster than anyone expected. The Carters' lawyers released their statement, and several news outlets published follow-up stories that painted a more sympathetic picture of Rosa. A few journalists even wrote about the impossible situation birth mothers face, the poverty, the lack of support, the impossible choices. Melissa's mother retreated into silence after a furious phone call from Jonathan that Rosa wasn't meant to overhear, but did anyway. "You tried to destroy us," Jonathan had said, his voice cold and hard. "Shh. You tried to destroy an innocent woman who has done nothing but love your grandson. And for what? Because you were embarrassed. Because it didn't fit your image of what our family should look like." Rosa didn't hear what his mother-in-law said in response. "We're done," Jonathan continued. "You are no longer welcome in our home. You are no longer welcome in Ethan's life. If you try to contact us again, we will pursue legal action." He hung up without saying goodbye. Rosa had been standing in the hallway, frozen. Jonathan turned and saw her. "I'm sorry you heard that," he said. "I'm sorry I caused problems with your family." "You didn't cause anything. She did." Jonathan's expression softened. "We choose our family, Rosa, and we've chosen you." 3 months after Rosa moved into the building, Ethan said his first full sentence. He was sitting in Rosa's lap on her new couch, a gift from Melissa that Rosa had eventually reluctantly accepted, playing with his dinosaur Rex. Rosa was reading him a story, the same story they had read 100 times before. Suddenly, Ethan looked up at her with those dark eyes. "I love you, Ma," he said, clear, deliberate, perfect. Rosa's heart stopped. "What did you say, baby? I love you?" Ethan smiled. "Ma is the best." Rosa hugged him so tight he squeaked in protest. "I love you too," she whispered. "I love you so much." Later that night, she texted Melissa, "Ethan said his first sentence today." Melissa's response came immediately, "What did he say?" Rosa hesitated. She didn't want to hurt Melissa. She didn't want to rub in the fact that Ethan had said those words to her first, but they had promised to be honest with each other. "He said, 'I love you, Ma.'" There was a long pause. Rosa watched the typing indicator appear and disappear several times. "Finally, that's wonderful. I'm glad he has you to say that to." Rosa stared at the message. 6 months ago, those words would have been impossible. Melissa would have been furious, jealous, devastated, but something had shifted between them. Rosa typed back, "He loves you too. He talks about Mommy all the time. I know, but thank you for saying it." Another pause. Then, "We should do something special this weekend. The 4 of us, as a family." Rosa smiled. "I'd like that." The weekend trip was Jonathan's idea. "We should get out of the city," he said at breakfast on Saturday. "Go somewhere quiet, just the 4 of us." "Where?" Melissa asked. "My parents have a house in the Hamptons. They're not using it this month." Rosa looked uncertain. "I don't know if that's a good idea. Your parents—" "My parents aren't invited. This is about us, our family." Our family. Rosa still wasn't used to hearing those words applied to her. They drove out that afternoon. Ethan fell asleep in his car seat within minutes, clutching Rex the dinosaur. Rosa sat in the back with him, watching the city give way to highways and then to quiet country roads. Melissa turned around from the front seat. "Can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you ever regret it, giving him up?" Rosa considered the question carefully. "Every single day," she admitted. "I wake up and I think about what I missed. His first smile, his first tooth, his first steps. All those moments I'll never get back." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. You were there for all of it. You gave him those moments." Rosa looked at Ethan's sleeping face. "I regret the circumstances. I regret that I wasn't strong enough or rich enough or lucky enough to keep him, but I don't regret that he ended up with you." Melissa was quiet for a moment. "For what it's worth," she finally said, "I think you were incredibly strong. Stronger than I could ever be." "What do you mean?" "I couldn't have done it. Given him up. Even if it was the right thing. Even if he would have been better off." Melissa's voice trembled. "You made the hardest choice a mother can make, and you did it because you loved him more than yourself. That's not weakness, Rosa. That's the opposite." Rosa felt tears sliding down her cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered. Jonathan reached back and squeezed her hand. "We're almost there," he said. "New beginnings for all of us." The Hamptons' house was beautiful, but Rosa barely noticed. What she noticed was how natural everything felt. Cooking dinner together in the big kitchen, watching Ethan run through the backyard chasing butterflies, sitting on the porch as the sun went down listening to the waves in the distance. For 2 days, they were just a family. No drama, no lawyers, no reporters, just 4 people who had somehow found their way to each other. On Sunday night, after Ethan was asleep, the 3 adults sat on the porch with glasses of wine. "I've been thinking," Melissa said, about the future. About what we tell Ethan when he's older." Rosa's chest tightened. "I've thought about that too. He's going to have questions about why he has 2 mothers, about why his story is different from other kids." "What do we tell him, Huck?" Melissa looked at Rosa. "The truth," she said. "We tell him the truth, that he was loved so much by one mother that she made sure he would have a better life, and loved so much by another that she opened her arms wide enough to share him." Rosa's eyes filled with tears. "You really believe that?" "I do now." Melissa reached over and took Rosa's hand. "We're going to raise him together, all 3 of us. It won't always be easy. There will be hard days, confusing days, days when none of us know what we're doing. But we'll figure it out, because that's what families do." Jonathan raised his glass. "To family, Waz," he said. "The one we were born into, and the one we've built." Rosa raised her glass, her hand trembling. "To family." Melissa clinked her glass against theirs. "To family." They drank in silence, watching the stars come out over the ocean. Rosa thought about everything that had brought her to this moment. The shelter, the hospital, the papers she had signed with shaking hands. The day she walked into the Carter penthouse and saw her son for the first time since she gave him away. She had lost everything. And somehow, impossibly, she had found even more. When they returned to the city on Monday, everything felt different. Rosa went back to her apartment 2 floors down, but it didn't feel like separation anymore. It felt like going to another room in the same house. Ethan split his time between both homes. Some nights he slept in Rosa's apartment. Some nights he slept upstairs with Jonathan and Melissa. He didn't seem to notice any difference. "Ma house," he would say, pointing at Rosa's door. Then pointing at the elevator, "Mommy house. Both houses mine." The simplicity of childhood. Both houses mine. Both mothers mine. Both loves mine. If only adults could see the world so clearly. The arrangement settled into a rhythm. Rosa found a new job, a real job, not cleaning houses for wealthy strangers. Jonathan had connections at a nonprofit organization that helped homeless mothers find housing and resources. They needed someone who understood what those mothers were going through. Rosa understood better than anyone. She started as a volunteer, then moved to part-time, then full-time. For the first time in her life, she was using her pain to help others. "You're good at this," her supervisor told her after a few months. "The women trust you. They open up to you in ways they don't with other counselors." "I've been where they are," Rosa said. "I know what it feels like to have nothing. But you have something now." Rosa thought about Ethan, about Melissa and Jonathan, about the apartment she never could have afforded and the life she never could have imagined. "Yes," she said, "I have everything." On Ethan's 3rd birthday, they threw a party. Not a small gathering this time, a real celebration. Balloons and streamers and a cake shaped like a dinosaur because Ethan was obsessed with dinosaurs now. The guest list was carefully curated. Jonathan's parents weren't invited. Melissa's mother wasn't invited. But Melissa's sister Catherine was there along with a few friends who had proven trustworthy over the past year. And Rosa was there. Not as a family friend, not as the cleaning lady, as Ethan's mother. "Happy birthday, baby," Rosa said, handing him a wrapped present. Ethan tore into it with abandon. Inside was a handmade blanket, soft and blue, with his name stitched in the corner. "I made it myself," Rosa said, "so you'd always have something for me no matter where you go." Ethan hugged the blanket to his chest. "I love it, Ma. I love you." "I love you too, sweetheart." Melissa watched from across the room. Her eyes were wet, but she was smiling. Later, after the cake had been eaten and the presents had been opened and the guests had gone home, the 3 adults sat in the living room while Ethan played with his new toys. "1 year," Melissa said quietly. "It's been 1 year since all of this started." "Feels longer," Jonathan said. "Feels like a lifetime," Rosa agreed. They sat in comfortable silence watching Ethan make his toy dinosaurs fight each other. "I never thought I'd say this," Melissa finally said. "But I'm glad you walked into our apartment that day. I'm glad Ethan found you. I'm glad we all found each other." Rosa looked at her. "Even after everything. The secrets, the lies, the scandal. Especially after everything." Melissa reached over and took Rosa's hand. "You made our family bigger, better, more complicated, definitely, but better." Rosa squeezed her hand. "Thank you for letting me in. Thank you for not giving up." Ethan looked up from his dinosaurs. "Ma," he said. "Mommy, Daddy, watch." He made 2 dinosaurs dance together. "They're friends," he explained. "Best friends, forever." The 3 adults looked at each other. Best friends, forever. Maybe that's what they were becoming, or maybe they were becoming something even more. 2 years passed like a dream Rosa never wanted to wake from. Ethan grew from a toddler into a curious, energetic 4-year-old who asked questions about everything. Why is the sky blue? Where do birds sleep? How come Ma lives downstairs and Mommy lives upstairs? Why do I have 2 moms when other kids only have 1? That last question came on a Tuesday afternoon in September. Rosa was helping Ethan build a tower with blocks when he looked up at her with those dark eyes that were so much like hers. "Tommy at school says it's weird," Ethan said. "He says you can't have 2 moms. He says one has to be fake." Rosa's heart clenched. She had known this day would come. They all had. "What do you think?" she asked carefully. Ethan considered the question with the seriousness only a 4-year-old could muster. "I think Tommy is dumb," he finally said. "I have 2 moms and they're both real. I can touch them and everything." Rosa laughed despite the ache in her chest. "That's very smart thinking." "Ma?" Ethan's voice grew quieter. "Why do I have 2 moms? Did something happen?" Rosa set down the block she was holding. "Do you remember the story about the bird who loved her baby so much she let another bird raise it?" Ethan nodded. They had read that book together dozens of times. "It's kind of like that," Rosa said. "When you were born, I loved you more than anything in the world, but I didn't have enough food or a safe place to live. I was scared that I couldn't take care of you properly." Ethan listened, his eyes wide. "So I found Mommy and Daddy, and I asked them to take care of you for me, to give you all the things I couldn't. But you came back." "I did, because I never stopped loving you, not for 1 second." Ethan thought about this. "So you gave me away because you loved me." "Yes, baby, I gave you away because I loved you too much to let you suffer." Ethan crawled into her lap and wrapped his arms around her neck. "I'm glad you came back, Ma." Rosa held him tight, tears streaming down her face. "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." That night, Rosa told Melissa about the conversation. They were sitting in Melissa's kitchen after Ethan had gone to bed, sharing a bottle of wine like they often did now. The tension that had once defined their relationship had long since melted away, replaced by something Rosa could only describe as friendship. "Tommy Parker," Melissa said, rolling her eyes. "His mother is the worst. She's been gossiping about our family since the article came out. Should we be worried?" "About Karen Parker?" "Please, she's harmless. Just jealous that her marriage is falling apart while ours—" Melissa stopped. "While our family is doing fine." Rosa noticed the slip but didn't comment on it. "Ethan handled it well," she said instead. "He's a smart kid." "He gets that from you." Rosa looked up surprised. "I'm serious," Melissa continued. "I've watched him these past 2 years. The way he thinks, the way he approaches problems, the way he sees the world, that's all you. He gets plenty from you, too." "His stubbornness, maybe," Melissa smiled. "And his terrible taste in music. Jonathan keeps playing him classical stuff, and Ethan insists on listening to kids' songs on repeat." Rosa laughed. "That's definitely a Melissa trait." They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. "Can I ask you something?" Melissa said. "Of course." "Do you ever think about what might have happened if things had been different, if you'd been able to keep him?" Rosa had thought about it, every single day for 5 years. "Sometimes," she admitted, "I imagine a different life. A little apartment somewhere. Just the 2 of us. I would have worked 3 jobs to give him everything. But it wouldn't have been enough. I know that now. He wouldn't have had this education, these opportunities, this stability." Rosa paused. "He wouldn't have had you." Melissa's eyes glistened. "I spent so long being jealous of you," she said quietly. "Of your connection with him. Of the way he lights up when he sees you. I thought it meant I wasn't enough. And now I realize there's no competition. We're not fighting over him. We're fighting for him. Together. Rosa reached across the table and took Melissa's hand. I never wanted to take him from you. I know, I think I've always known. I was just too scared to admit it. They squeezed hands, two mothers united by love for the same child. Jonathan and I have been talking, Melissa said, about making this official. Rosa frowned. What do you mean? The legal arrangement. Right now, you have no formal rights. If something happened to us, God forbid you'd have no claim to Ethan. Some relative could swoop in and take him away. Rosa's blood ran cold. She had never thought about that. What are you suggesting? Guardianship papers. Legal recognition of your role in his life. It wouldn't be custody, he'd still be ours legally, but it would give you standing, protection. Rosa stared at her. You'd do that. We should have done it years ago. Jonathan's lawyers are drawing up the paperwork. Rosa couldn't speak. Tears rolled down her cheeks. I don't know what to say. Say yes, Melissa said simply. Say you'll sign the papers. Say you'll officially become part of this family. Rosa nodded, too overwhelmed to form words. Melissa smiled. Good. Now finish your wine. We have a lot to celebrate. The guardianship papers were signed 2 weeks later. It was a simple ceremony, just Rosa, Jonathan, Melissa, and their lawyer in a conference room downtown. But to Rosa, it felt like the most important moment of her life. When she signed her name on the final document, her hands were shaking. Congratulations, the lawyer said. You are now officially Ethan's legal guardian in the event of... Well, let's hope it never comes to that. Jonathan shook Rosa's hand. Melissa hugged her. Welcome to the family, Melissa whispered. Officially? Rosa laughed through her tears. I don't know how to thank you. You already have, every day, just by loving him. That night, they celebrated with dinner at Jonathan's favorite restaurant. Ethan came too, even though it was past his bedtime, because they wanted him to be part of this moment. What are we celebrating? Ethan asked, looking at the fancy dessert the waiter had brought. Family, Jonathan said. We're celebrating family. Ethan considered this. We're always family, he said matter-of-factly. That's not new. The three adults exchanged looks. You're absolutely right, Melissa said. It's not new, but sometimes it's nice to say it out loud. Ethan shrugged and attacked his chocolate cake. Rosa watched him eat her heart fuller than she had ever imagined possible. She had spent so many years believing she had lost everything. But sitting in that restaurant surrounded by the people who had become her family, she realized she had gained so much more. 3 months after the guardianship papers were signed, Rosa received a letter. She found it in her mailbox on a cold December morning. Plain white envelope. No return address. Her name handwritten in blocky letters she didn't recognize. Rosa tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper with 3 sentences. I know who you are, I know what you did, and I want to meet my son. Rosa's blood turned to ice. She read the words again, and again, and again. There was only one person who could have written this. Derek. The man who had abandoned her the moment she told him she was pregnant. The man who had disappeared to California without a word. The man who had never known or cared that his son existed. Until now. Rosa's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold the letter. Her mind raced through questions. How did he find her? How did he know about Ethan? What did he want? She fumbled for her phone and called Melissa. Rosa, what's wrong? You sound... Derek wrote to me. Silence. Derek, Ethan's biological father. He knows. He knows everything and he wants to meet Ethan. Oh my God, how did he... I don't know. The article maybe? Or someone told him. I don't know. Where are you? My apartment. Stay there. I'm coming down. 5 minutes later, Melissa was at Rosa's door with Jonathan right behind her. Rosa handed them the letter with trembling hands. Jonathan read it first. His expression darkened. This is a threat, he said. He's trying to intimidate you. But how did he find out? Rosa asked. He left before Ethan was born. He never knew I gave him up for adoption. He never knew anything. The media coverage, Melissa said quietly. When my mother went to the press, the article had your name, your history. If he saw it, he would have put the pieces together, Jonathan finished. Damn it. Rosa sank onto her couch, her legs unable to support her anymore. What do I do? What do we do? Jonathan sat beside her. First, we don't panic. This letter isn't a legal document. He can't just show up and claim Ethan. But he's the biological father, Rosa whispered. He has rights. He has nothing. He abandoned you. He never established paternity. He never paid child support. In the eyes of the law, he's a stranger. Jonathan's right, Melissa added. The adoption was legal. Our custody is secure. He can't touch us. Then why does this feel like the end of the world? Melissa knelt in front of Rosa and took her hands. Because you're scared. And that's okay. But we've faced worse than this. We've faced my mother and the media and all those people who said our family was wrong. We survived all of that. We'll survive this too. Rosa looked at her. What if he takes us to court? What if he demands custody? Then we fight him, Jonathan said firmly, with everything we have, and we win, because we're Ethan's family, not him. Rosa wanted to believe them. She wanted to feel their confidence, their certainty, but all she could think about was the letter in Jonathan's hands, and the man who had written it. Derek Sullivan showed up at Rosa's apartment 3 days later. She was coming home from work when she saw him standing outside her building, older than she remembered, thicker around the middle, gray streaking through his dark hair. But those eyes, she would never forget those eyes. Rosa stopped walking. Her body froze. Rosa. Derek's voice was the same, smooth, charming, the voice that had promised her forever. What are you doing here? I wanted to talk, in person. I have nothing to say to you. She tried to walk past him, but he blocked her path. Please, just 5 minutes. You had 5 minutes. 6 years ago, you chose to run. I know, and I'm sorry. Rosa laughed bitterly. You're sorry. That's wonderful. That changes everything. Rosa, do you have any idea what you did to me? Do you have any idea what I went through? I was homeless, Derek. I was living in a shelter while I was pregnant with your child, and you were in California starting a new life like I never existed. Derek's face tightened. I was scared. I was 26 years old, and I wasn't ready to be a father. So you ran. You blocked my number. You moved across the country. You never even asked if the baby was okay. I'm asking now. Rosa stared at him. It's too late. You're 6 years too late. I saw the article about you and the Carter family, about our son. He's not our son. He stopped being yours the moment you abandoned us. Derek stepped closer. I want to meet him. I have a right to know my own child. You have no rights. You gave them up when you disappeared. That's not how the law works. Then take us to court. Sue for custody. See what happens. Rosa's voice shook with fury. But I promise you this, I will tell Ethan exactly who you are. I will tell him how his father left us to starve. How his father never sent a single dollar to help. How his father showed up after 6 years, not because he loves him, but because he saw an opportunity. Derek's expression changed. The charm dropped. Something harder emerged. You think you can keep him from me? I think the Carter's lawyers will destroy you. I think any judge in this country will see exactly what you are, a deadbeat who only showed up when there was money involved. This isn't about money. Then what is it about? Derek didn't answer. Rosa pushed past him. Stay away from my son. Stay away from my family. If I see you again, I'm calling the police. She walked into her building without looking back, but her hands were shaking so hard she could barely press the elevator button. That night, Rosa told Jonathan and Melissa everything. He came to your building. Jonathan's voice was tight with anger. How did he know where you live? I don't know. He must have followed me from work or found my address somehow. This is harassment. We need to document everything. He said he has rights, that the law is on his side. He's bluffing, Jonathan said. He has no case. 0. But what if he keeps coming back? What if he shows up at Ethan's school? What if he tries to contact Ethan directly? Melissa went pale. He wouldn't. We can't assume anything, Jonathan said. I'm calling our lawyers first thing tomorrow. We need a restraining order. Will that stop him? It'll make it illegal for him to come near any of us. If he violates it, he goes to jail. Rosa nodded, but her stomach was churning. She had spent years believing Derek was gone forever, that she would never have to face him again, that he had no power over her life anymore. She had been wrong. The restraining order was filed within a week. Derek contested it. He hired a lawyer, a cheap one from what Rosa could tell, and filed his own paperwork claiming he had been denied access to his biological child. The first hearing was scheduled for January. Rosa spent the weeks leading up to it in a state of constant anxiety. She couldn't eat. She couldn't sleep. She jumped every time her phone rang. Melissa tried to help. You're not alone in this, she kept saying, but we're fighting this together. But Rosa couldn't shake the fear. What if Derek won something? What if a judge decided he deserved visitation? What if Ethan was forced to spend time with the man who had abandoned him before he was born? The thought made her physically sick. The night before the hearing, Rosa sat in Ethan's room while he slept. She watched his chest rise and fall. She listened to his soft breathing. She memorized every detail of his face, the face that looked so much like hers, that had once looked up at her from a hospital bassinet, that had smiled at her that first day in the Carters' nursery. "I won't let him take you," she whispered. "I won't let anyone take you away from us." Ethan stirred, but didn't wake. Rosa stayed there until dawn. The courthouse was cold and gray. Rosa sat between Jonathan and Melissa, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles were white. Their lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Chen, sat at the table in front of them, organizing papers with calm efficiency. Derek was across the aisle. Rosa hadn't looked at him since they arrived. She couldn't. "All rise," the bailiff called. "The Honorable Judge Margaret Thompson presiding." Everyone stood. The judge entered, a stern woman in her 60s with gray hair and sharp eyes. "Be seated." Patricia presented their case first. She laid out everything. Derek's abandonment, his complete absence from Ethan's life, his failure to pay child support or establish paternity, the legal adoption that had given the Carters full parental rights, the guardianship agreement that recognized Rosa's role. "Your Honor," Patricia concluded, "this man is not Ethan's father in any meaningful sense. He is a biological contributor who chose to disappear. He has no relationship with the child. He has made no effort to build one. His sudden interest coincides suspiciously with media coverage of the Carter family's wealth." The judge's expression was unreadable. Derek's lawyer stood. He was young, nervous, clearly outmatched. "Your Honor, my client acknowledges his past mistakes, but the bond between father and child is sacred. Mr. Sullivan has a right to know his son. He's asking for nothing more than supervised visitation, a chance to build the relationship he should have had from the beginning." Rosa's stomach turned. The judge looked at Derek. "Mr. Sullivan, I've reviewed the records. You left Miss Martinez when she was pregnant. You moved across the country. You made no attempt to contact her or the child for 6 years. Is that correct?" Derek shifted in his seat. "Yes, Your Honor. I was young and scared." "I'm not interested in excuses. I'm interested in facts." The judge's voice was cold. "The fact is that you abandoned a pregnant woman. The fact is that you showed no interest in your child until you saw an opportunity. The fact is that Ethan Carter, not Ethan Sullivan, not Ethan Martinez, has a family, a real family, one that you are not part of." Derek's face reddened. "Your Honor." "I'm not finished." The judge leaned forward. "I've seen cases like this before. Absent parents who suddenly appear when they think there's something to gain. It's transparent, Mr. Sullivan. And frankly, it's insulting to this court." Rosa felt tears sliding down her face. "The restraining order is granted, the judge continued. "You are to stay at least 500 feet from Ethan Carter, Rosa Martinez, and the Carter family residence at all times. Any violation will result in immediate arrest." "Your Honor, this isn't fair. You had 6 years to be fair. You chose differently." The judge banged her gavel. "Case dismissed." Rosa collapsed against Melissa's shoulder. It was over. Derek was gone. But as the bailiff led him from the courtroom, Derek turned and looked directly at Rosa. His eyes were cold, hard, full of something that looked like hatred. "This isn't finished," he mouthed. Rosa's blood ran cold. She had won the battle. But she wasn't sure it's the worst time in... The war was over. The weeks after the hearing were tense. Rosa jumped at every shadow. She checked the locks on her door 3 times before bed. She walked Ethan to school, personally scanning the street for any sign of Derek. Jonathan hired private security, a man named Marcus, who was built like a linebacker and had eyes that missed nothing. "Is this really necessary?" Rosa asked. "Until we're sure Derek isn't a threat, yes." Jonathan's voice was firm. "I won't take chances with my family." My family? Rosa still marveled at how naturally those words came from him now. 3 months passed, then 6. The security detail was gradually reduced. Life returned to something like normal. Ethan started kindergarten. He made friends. He learned to read. He came home every day with stories about his teacher and his classmates and the games they played at recess. He never asked about Derek. He didn't know Derek existed. Rosa hoped it would stay that way forever. On Ethan's 5th birthday, they threw the biggest party yet. 30 children from his kindergarten class, parents milling around with drinks, a bounce house in the backyard of the Hamptons house because Melissa had insisted. Rosa stood at the edge of the chaos watching Ethan run and laugh and play with his friends. "He's happy," Melissa said, appearing beside her. "He is?" "We did good." Rosa smiled. "We did." Melissa handed her a glass of champagne. To 5 years of insanity. To 5 more. They clinked glasses. I have something for you, Melissa said. A birthday present. Sort of. It's Ethan's birthday, not mine. I know, but this is for you. Melissa pulled an envelope from her pocket. Open it. Rosa frowned and tore open the envelope. Inside was a check. Her eyes widened when she saw the number. Melissa, I can't accept this. You can and you will. It's not charity. It's back pay. Back pay. For 5 years of being Ethan's mother. For 5 years of loving him. When you had every reason to be bitter. For 5 years of making our family complete. Melissa's voice softened. You've given us so much, Rosa. Let us give something back. Rosa's hands trembled. This is more money than I've ever seen in my life. I know, that's kind of the point. Melissa smiled. Use it for whatever you want. A new apartment, a vacation, a retirement fund. It's yours. Rosa looked at the check, then at Melissa, then at Ethan, who was currently being chased by 3 other children while screaming with delight. I don't know what to say. Say thank you and put it in your pocket before you lose it. Rosa laughed through her tears. Thank you. You're welcome. Melissa put an arm around her shoulder. Now come on, they're about to do the piñata and I need someone to film it with me. They walked toward the party together. 2 mothers, 1 child, 1 family, imperfect, complicated, beautiful. Rosa had spent so many years believing that love was finite, that it could be used up, depleted, exhausted. But watching Ethan swing at the piñata while his friends cheered and his parents laughed, she realized the truth. Love wasn't finite. It multiplied. It grew stronger with every person who chose to share it. And somehow, against all odds, Rosa had found herself at the center of more love than she had ever imagined possible. That night, after the party was over and the guests had gone home and Ethan was asleep in his bed, Rosa sat on the porch of the Hamptons' house and looked at the stars. Jonathan came out with 2 cups of coffee and sat beside her. Long day, he said. Good day. The best. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Can I tell you something? Jonathan asked. Of course. When we first found out about you, who you really were, I was terrified. I thought you were going to destroy everything we'd built. I thought you were the enemy. Rosa nodded. I know. But you weren't. You were the opposite. Jonathan turned to look at her. You made us better. You made me a better father. You made Melissa a better mother. You made Ethan a happier child. I didn't do anything special. I just loved him. That's exactly what made it special. Jonathan paused. I don't say this enough, but I'm grateful for you, not just for what you did for Ethan, for what you did for us. Rosa's eyes filled with tears. I never expected any of this, she whispered. I thought I would spend the rest of my life on the outside looking in, watching him grow up from a distance, never being part of his world. But you're not on the outside. You're right here, in the middle of everything. I know, and sometimes it still doesn't feel real. Jonathan put his hand on hers. It's real. This family, this life, all of it. He squeezed gently. You belong here, Rosa. Don't ever doubt that. Silence. Rosa looked at the stars at the house behind them, at the life she had somehow stumbled into. I won't, she said softly. Not anymore. Inside, Ethan's nightlight glowed through his window. Inside, Melissa was already asleep, exhausted from a day of celebration. Inside, a family waited. Imperfect and beautiful and hers. Rosa finished her coffee and went inside to join them. 10 years had passed since Rosa first walked into the Carter penthouse with her cleaning cart. 10 years since she saw Ethan sleeping in that expensive crib and felt her world collapse. 10 years since Melissa's voice had shattered the silence with accusations and fear. 10 years since 3 strangers began the impossible journey of becoming a family. Ethan was 12 now, tall for his age with Rosa's dark hair and Melissa's stubborn chin. He played soccer on the school team, got straight A's in everything except math, and had recently discovered a passion for photography that surprised everyone. He still called Rosa Ma and Melissa Mom. He had never seen a contradiction in having 2 mothers. To him, it was simply how his family worked. But on a cold February morning, everything Rosa had built began to unravel. She was at her office at the nonprofit when her phone rang. The caller ID showed Ethan's school. Ms. Martinez, this is Principal Henderson. We need you to come in immediately. There's been an incident involving Ethan. Rosa's heart stopped. What kind of incident is he hurt? He's not hurt physically, but there's been a situation. We've already called Mr. and Mrs. Carter. They're on their way. I'll be there in 15 minutes. Rosa grabbed her coat and ran. The school was chaos when she arrived. Parents clustered in the hallway, whispering. Teachers moved between classrooms with tight expressions. The principal's office was closed, but Rosa could see figures moving behind the frosted glass. She pushed through the door without knocking. Jonathan and Melissa were already there, sitting on one side of the room. Ethan sat alone in a chair by the window, his face pale, his eyes fixed on the floor. "What happened?" Rosa demanded. Principal Henderson stood behind his desk. "Please sit down, Ms. Martinez." "I'll sit down when someone tells me what's going on." "Ma?" Ethan's voice was small. "I messed up." Rosa crossed the room and knelt in front of him. "What happened, sweetheart?" Ethan finally looked at her. His eyes were red like he had been crying. "There was this kid, Tyler. He's been saying stuff about our family for months, about how it's weird, how you're not my real mom, how I'm adopted, and that makes me different." Rosa's chest tightened. "Today he said something worse," Ethan continued. "He said my real mom gave me away because she didn't want me. He said I was garbage that got thrown out." Rosa felt like someone had punched her in the stomach. "So I hit him," Ethan said quietly. "Hard. I broke his nose." Silence filled the room. Principal Henderson cleared his throat. "Ethan is facing suspension, possibly expulsion. Tyler's parents are threatening to press assault charges." "Assault charges?" Jonathan's voice was sharp. "He's 12 years old." "Their son required medical attention. They're within their rights." Rosa stood up slowly. Her hands were shaking, but her voice was steady. "Where are Tyler's parents now?" "In the conference room. They're quite upset." "I want to talk to them." "Rosa?" Melissa started. "I want to talk to them now." The conference room was 2 doors down. Rosa walked in without waiting for permission. A well-dressed couple sat at the table, the woman dabbing at her eyes with a tissue, the man red-faced with anger. "You must be the birth mother," the man said. "The cleaning lady who wormed her way into..." "Stop talking." Rosa's voice was ice. "Excuse me." "I said stop talking." Rosa walked to the table and placed both hands flat on the surface. "Your son has been bullying mine for months, saying cruel, vicious things about his family, about his adoption, about his mother. That doesn't give your son the right to assault. Your son told a 12-year-old boy that his mother threw him away like garbage. Your son made a child believe he was unwanted, unloved, worthless." Rosa leaned forward. "So before you talk about assault charges, maybe you should think about the emotional damage your son has been inflicting every single day." The woman spoke up. "Tyler was just repeating what he heard. He didn't mean what he heard from who?" Rosa's eyes narrowed. "From you, is that what you say about my family at your dinner table?" The woman went pale. "I think we should all calm down," Principal Henderson said from the doorway. "I'm perfectly calm," Rosa replied. "I'm just making something very clear." She looked at Tyler's parents directly. "If you press charges against my son, we will sue you for defamation, intentional infliction of emotional distress, and anything else our lawyers can think of. The Carters have more attorneys than you have excuses, so I suggest you take your son home, have a very long conversation about bullying, and let this go." Tyler's father sputtered. "You can't threaten us." "I'm not threatening, I'm explaining." Rosa straightened. "Your choice." She walked out without looking back. In the hallway, Jonathan was waiting. "That was impressive," he said quietly. "That was a mother protecting her son." "I know, that's what made it impressive." They walked back to the principal's office together. "Tyler's parents have decided not to press charges," Principal Henderson announced 15 minutes later, "but Ethan will still face a 2-week suspension for fighting." "We understand," Melissa said. "We'll handle it from here." They gathered their things and left. Ethan walked between Rosa and Melissa, his head down, his shoulders slumped. Outside, Rosa stopped him. "Ethan, look at me." He raised his eyes reluctantly. "What Tyler said was cruel and wrong. You are not garbage. You were never unwanted. I gave you up because I loved you more than anything in the world, and I couldn't give you the life you deserved." "I know, Ma." "Do you?" "Because what you did today defending our family, that took courage. But violence isn't the answer, even when people say horrible things." "I know," Ethan's voice cracked. "I just couldn't stand there and let him say that stuff about you." Rosa pulled him into a hug. "I love you," she whispered. "I have loved you every single day since before you were born, and nothing anyone says can ever change that." Ethan held on tight. I love you too, Ma." Over his shoulder, Rosa saw Melissa watching. Their eyes met. Melissa nodded once, a small acknowledgement. This was what family looked like. Messy, complicated, worth fighting for. The suspension turned out to be a blessing in disguise. For 2 weeks, Ethan stayed home. He split his time between Rosa's apartment and the main penthouse, talking to all 3 of his parents about things he had never discussed before. He asked about the adoption. He asked about Derek. He asked about the early years, the shelter, the hospital, the day Rosa signed the papers that gave him away. Rosa answered every question honestly. She didn't hide the pain or sugarcoat the circumstances. She told him the truth, all of it, and let him process it in his own way. "Do you regret it?" Ethan asked one evening. "Giving me up." They were sitting on Rosa's couch, eating pizza, watching a movie neither of them was really paying attention to. "Every single day," Rosa admitted. "I regret that I couldn't keep you. I regret all the moments I missed. I regret that you had to grow up wondering about me. But I don't regret that you ended up with Jonathan and Melissa. They gave you everything I couldn't. They loved you when I wasn't able to be there." Ethan was quiet for a moment. "Tyler was wrong," he finally said. "You didn't throw me away. You gave me to people who could take care of me." "That's exactly right. And then you came back." "I never really left. I was always looking for you. I just didn't know how to find you until fate put us in the same place." Ethan leaned against her shoulder. "I'm glad fate did that." Rosa kissed the top of his head. "Me too, sweetheart. Me too." When Ethan returned to school, everything had changed. Tyler avoided him in the hallways. Other kids who had whispered behind his back suddenly wanted to be his friend. A story had spread, probably exaggerated, about how Ethan had stood up for his family, how his birth mother had faced down Tyler's parents, how the Carters' lawyers had threatened to destroy anyone who messed with them. "I'm kind of famous now," Ethan told Rosa after his first day back. "In a weird way. Famous isn't always good. I know, but some kids told me they thought our family was actually pretty cool, like having 2 moms who both love me that much." Rosa smiled. "What did you say?" I said, "Yeah, it's pretty cool." And then I showed them that photo we took at the Hamptons last summer, the one where we're all making funny faces, so did that help? "I think so. They stopped looking at me like I was some kind of freak anyway." Rosa reached out and squeezed his hand. "You were never a freak. You were just different, and different isn't bad." "I know that now." Ethan paused. "Actually, I've known it for a while. I just needed everyone else to catch up. 6 months after the Tyler incident, Melissa got sick. It started with fatigue, then headaches, then a pain in her abdomen that wouldn't go away. Jonathan convinced her to see a doctor. The doctor ordered tests. The tests revealed a mass on her pancreas. The word cancer hung over the penthouse like a death sentence. Rosa found out on a Thursday afternoon. Jonathan called her, his voice breaking. "It's stage 3. They're recommending surgery and chemotherapy. The survival rate is..." He couldn't finish. Rosa felt her legs give out. She sank onto her couch. "Where is she now?" "At the hospital. They're keeping her overnight for more tests." "And Ethan?" "He doesn't know yet. We wanted to figure out what to tell him first." "I'm coming over." "Rosa, you don't have to." "I'm coming over." She hung up before he could argue. When Rosa arrived at the hospital, she found Melissa alone in her room. The machines beeped steadily. The IV dripped. Melissa looked small in the hospital bed, smaller than Rosa had ever seen her. "You came?" Melissa said. "Of course I came." Rosa sat in the chair beside the bed. "Jonathan told you everything." "He told me enough." Melissa closed her eye. "I'm scared, Rosa. I'm not supposed to admit that. I'm supposed to be strong and positive and fight this thing, but I'm terrified." Rosa took her hand. "You're allowed to be scared. That doesn't make you weak." "What if I don't make it? What if Ethan has to grow up without me?" "He won't grow up without a mother. He has me. He'll always have me." Melissa opened her eyes. Tears streamed down her cheeks. "I know. That's the only thing that gives me any peace." She squeezed Rosa's hand. "Promise me something. Anything. If I don't survive this, if the worst happens, promise me you'll take care of them. Jonathan and Ethan. Promise me you'll keep our family together." Rosa felt her own tears falling. "I promise. And promise me you'll tell Ethan about me. The real me. Not some perfect version. Tell him I was stubborn and jealous and scared. Tell him I made mistakes, but also tell him I loved him more than anything in the world. You can tell him yourself. You're going to beat this. Maybe, but if I don't, you will." Rosa's voice was fierce. You will beat this because you're the strongest woman I know, because Ethan needs you, because our family isn't complete without you." Melissa smiled weakly. "Our family? I never thought I'd hear you say that." "It's true. You're my family, Melissa. I didn't choose you, but I choose to love you, every day." Melissa broke down completely. Rosa held her hand and let her cry. The surgery happened 3 weeks later. It lasted 8 hours. 8 hours of Jonathan pacing the waiting room. 8 hours of Rosa sitting with Ethan answering his questions, keeping him calm. "Is Mom going to die?" Ethan asked at hour 5. "The doctors are doing everything they can." "That's not an answer." Rosa looked at her son, their son, and saw the fear in his eyes. "I don't know," she admitted. "I wish I could promise you she'll be okay, but I can't. What I can promise is that whatever happens, we'll face it together. You won't be alone." Ethan nodded slowly. "I don't want to lose her." "Neither do I." "You really mean that?" "More than you know?" At hour 8, the surgeon emerged. "The operation was successful. We removed the tumor completely. She'll need chemotherapy to make sure we got everything, but the prognosis is good." Jonathan collapsed into a chair, his head in his hands. Rosa held Ethan as he cried with relief. Melissa survived. The chemotherapy was brutal. She lost her hair. She lost weight. Some days she couldn't get out of bed. Rosa moved into the penthouse to help. She took care of Ethan when Jonathan was at the hospital. She cooked meals, did laundry, managed the household. She became the glue that held everything together. "You don't have to do all this," Jonathan said one night after Ethan was asleep. "Yes, I do." "Why?" Rosa looked at him. "Because that's what family does. We show up. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." Jonathan's eyes filled with tears. "I don't know how to thank you." "You don't have to. You've given me more than I could ever repay. A home, a son, a purpose." Rosa paused. "Let me give something back." Jonathan hugged her. It was the first time he had ever hugged her like that. Not formally, not politely, but like she was truly part of his family. Because she was. Melissa finished chemotherapy 6 months later. The scans were clear. The doctors were cautiously optimistic. Recovery would take time, but she was going to live. The day she came home from her final treatment, they threw a party. Not a big one. Just the 4 of them. Pizza and cake and a movie marathon on the couch. Ethan sat between his 2 mothers, his head on Melissa's shoulder, his hand holding Rosa's. "I have an announcement," Melissa said during a break in the movie. Everyone looked at her. "The cancer made me think about a lot of things. About what's important. About what I want my life to look like." She took a deep breath. "I want to make something official. Something I should have done years ago." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a piece of paper. "This is a petition," she continued, "for Rosa to legally adopt Ethan." Rosa's heart stopped. "What?" "Not instead of us. In addition to us. 3 legal parents. It's unusual, but it's not unheard of. Our lawyers say it's possible." Rosa couldn't speak. "You've been his mother from the day he was born," Melissa continued. "It's time the law recognized that." "But the guardianship papers..." "Guardianship isn't the same as parenthood. You deserve more than a backup plan. You deserve to be his mother. Officially, permanently." Rosa looked at Jonathan. "You agree with this?" "It was my idea," Jonathan admitted. "Well, partly. Melissa and I talked about it during her treatment." "She's right. You're not a guardian, Rosa. You're a parent. Our son has 3 parents. It's time everyone knew it." Rosa turned to Ethan. "What do you think?" Ethan grinned. "I think it's about time." Rosa burst into tears. Melissa pulled her into a hug. Jonathan joined them. Ethan wrapped his arm around all 3 of them. They stayed like that for a long time. A family. Complete. Official. Real. The adoption was finalized on Ethan's 13th birthday. The courtroom was different this time. Not cold and gray like the hearing with Derek, but warm somehow. Hopeful. Judge Thompson, the same judge who had granted the restraining order years ago, presided over the ceremony. "This is an unusual case," she said, looking at the papers in front of her. 3 parents. 2 mothers, 1 father. Not a traditional family by any definition. Rosa held her breath. "But in my years on the bench, I've learned that traditional isn't always better." The judge looked at them over her glasses. "What matters is love. Commitment. The willingness to put a child's needs above your own. And this family, unusual as it is, has demonstrated all of those things in abundance." She picked up her pen. "It is the order of this court that Rosa Martinez is hereby granted full parental rights to Ethan Carter. He will now legally have 3 parents. May your family continue to thrive." She signed the document with a flourish. "Congratulations!" The courtroom erupted in applause. Ethan tackled Rosa in a hug. "You're officially my mom now," he said. "Like on paper and everything. I've always been your mom's sweetheart." "I know, but now the whole world knows too." Rosa held him tight, tears streaming down her face. Behind them, Melissa was crying too. Jonathan had his arm around her, his own eyes suspiciously wet. "Group hug," Ethan demanded. They obliged. 4 people bound together by love standing in a courtroom that had just made them a family in every legal sense. It was the best birthday present Ethan had ever received. 5 years later, Ethan graduated from high school. He stood at the podium as valedictorian looking out at the crowd of parents and students and teachers. "When I was asked to give this speech," he began, "I thought about what I wanted to say, what wisdom I could share, what lessons I've learned." He paused. "And I realized the most important lesson came from my family." Rosa sat between Jonathan and Melissa, her heart pounding. "I have 3 parents," Ethan continued. 2 mothers and 1 father. People used to think that was weird. Some people still do, but to me it's just normal." A ripple of laughter moved through the crowd. "My birth mother gave me life. She loved me so much that when she couldn't take care of me, she found people who could. That's not weakness. That's the strongest kind of love there is." Rosa felt tears sliding down her cheeks. "My adoptive mother took me in when I was a stranger. She opened her heart even when she was scared, even when it would have been easier to keep me at arm's length. She chose to love me, every single day." Melissa grabbed Rosa's hand. "And my father held our family together through everything, the hard times, the scary times, the times when it felt like everything was falling apart. He never gave up on us." Jonathan wiped his eyes. "People ask me sometimes what it's like to have 3 parents, and I tell them it's like having 3 times the love, 3 times the support, 3 times the people who will catch you when you fall." Ethan looked directly at his family. "Mom, Ma, Dad, thank you for everything. For teaching me that family isn't about blood or biology. It's about choice. It's about showing up. It's about loving someone even when it's hard." He smiled. "I am who I am because of you, all 3 of you, and I am so incredibly proud to be your son." The crowd erupted in applause. Rosa was sobbing openly now. Melissa squeezed her hand. Jonathan put his arm around both of them. On the stage, Ethan was grinning. "Now, huh?" he said. "Let's graduate." After the ceremony, the 4 of them went to dinner at Jonathan's favorite restaurant. They sat at a corner table just like they had years ago when they first started becoming a family. But everything was different now, better. "I can't believe you're going to college," Melissa said, looking at Ethan with wonder. "It feels like yesterday you were learning to walk." "That was actually a long time ago, Mom." "Don't be smart with me. I changed your diapers." "So did Ma. You both tell that story constantly." Rosa laughed. "We earned the right." Jonathan raised his glass. "To Ethan, high school valedictorian, future world changer, best son anyone could ask for." They all raised their glasses. "To Ethan." Ethan blushed. "You guys are embarrassing." "That's our job," Rosa said. "It's in the parenting contract." "There's a contract. 3 copies, 1 for each of us." Ethan groaned, but he was smiling. They ate and talked and laughed late into the night. Stories about Ethan's childhood, memories of the hard times and the good times, plans for the future. When they finally left the restaurant, the city was quiet around them. Rosa stood on the sidewalk looking at her family. Ethan tall and confident, ready to take on the world. Jonathan steady and strong, the anchor that had held them all together. Melissa healthy and happy, the woman who had started as an enemy and become a sister. "What are you thinking about?" Melissa asked. "Everything," Rosa said. "The day I first saw him in your nursery, the day you almost had me arrested, the day we signed those visitation papers, all of it." "Any regrets?" Rosa shook her head. "Not one. Not any more." Melissa smiled. "Good, because I wouldn't change anything either." They walked toward the car together. "Hey, Ma," Ethan said. "Yes." "Thank you for not giving up on me, on us, on this whole crazy family thing." Rosa stopped walking. "Sweetheart, I would never give up on you, not in a million years." "I know, but I wanted to say it anyway." Rosa pulled him into a hug. "I love you, Ethan. I have loved you since before you were born. I will love you until long after I'm gone." "I love you too, Ma." They stood there for a long moment. Then Jonathan cleared his throat. "Not to break up this beautiful moment, but it's getting cold, and I'm old." "You're not old, Dad." I'm 53. That's basically ancient. Melissa laughed. He's been complaining about his age since he turned 40. That's because 40 is when everything starts falling apart. They piled into the car, still laughing, still teasing, still being exactly what they had become, a family. Rosa sat in the back seat next to Ethan, watching the city lights flash by. 18 years ago, she had been homeless and pregnant and terrified. 18 years ago, she had signed papers in a hospital room believing she would never see her son again. 18 years ago, she had lost everything, but she had found so much more. A son who loved her, a family who chose her, a life she never could have imagined. The car pulled up to the building on Central Park South, the same building where Rosa had arrived with her cleaning cart all those years ago, the same building where she had discovered her son and lost him and found him again. Home. Same time tomorrow for brunch? Melissa asked as they got out. Wouldn't miss it, Rosa replied. They hugged on the sidewalk. Good night, sister, Melissa whispered. Good night, sister. Rosa watched them walk into the lobby. Then she went to her own apartment 2 floors down. She closed the door behind her and stood in the darkness for a moment. On her nightstand was the same Polaroid photo she had kept for 18 years. Ethan newborn cradled in her arms. The only thing she had from those 48 hours in the hospital. But now, it wasn't the only thing. Now she had the graduation photo from today, the birthday photos from every year, the vacation photos, the holiday photos, the random Tuesday photos. She had a lifetime of memories. She had a family. She had everything. Rosa picked up the old Polaroid and held it close to her heart. We made it, baby, she whispered to the image of her newborn son. We made it. Outside her window, the city sparkled with a million lights. Somewhere above her, Ethan was getting ready for bed in the penthouse he called home. Somewhere in the universe, fate was smiling at the impossible family that had somehow found its way together. Rosa put down the photo and went to bed. For the first time in 18 years, she slept without dreams. She didn't need them anymore. Her dreams had already come true. Love, Rosa had learned, was not a finite resource. It did not diminish when shared. It did not weaken when tested. It multiplied with every person who chose to give it, every heart that opened to receive it, every family that dared to define itself on its own terms. Melissa had taught her that. Jonathan had shown her that. Ethan had proven it every single day. And Rosa, the cleaning lady who had walked into a penthouse and found her son, the birth mother who had given up everything and gained so much more, the woman who had been invisible and become essential, Rosa had finally learned to believe it. Family was not about blood. Family was not about biology. Family was about choice. And Rosa Martinez had chosen well.